A woman with pink hair and a striking red uniform descends a grand staircase at night, walking with poise and purpose. A formal introduction reveals her to be Arya von Winterhart, captain of the Crown Prince's Guard in the Rosenberg Empire. Two of her subordinates, one with orange hair and another with blue hair, salute her and praise her good work for the day. Arya smiles warmly amidst a shower of flower petals, announcing to her guards that she'll be heading out now. The orange-haired guard watches her leave, remarking to his companion that she is such a stoic person. The blue-haired guard smiles, confidently guessing that their stoic captain probably trains every single day. Thud! A heavy mug slams down onto a wooden surface with force. In a dramatic reveal, Arya is actually at a tavern, bawling uncontrollably as a bald man sighs, "Oh no, here we go again!" Reduced to a caricature of sorrow, she continues to wail, tears streaming from her eyes. The bald bartender hands her a tissue to wipe her tears, his expression one of weary resignation. He smiles kindly, telling her that thanks to her, everyone else can drink in peace. Arya's tear-filled eyes well up once more, her face a mask of adorable sadness. Overwhelmed by his words, her eyes begin to sparkle with a fresh wave of emotional tears. The bartender asks her to keep supporting them and calls for another round. However, when she asks if it's on the house, he bluntly refuses. The scene shifts to a majestic, sun-drenched castle basking in the morning light. An unseen person greets Lady Arya, who smiles serenely and returns the good morning wish. Walking through a palace hall, Arya is greeted cheerfully by two other men in uniform. Carrying a stack of papers, she stands resolute before a set of large, ornate doors. Inside, the blue-haired man from earlier lounges lazily on a couch as Arya stiffly greets him. "Good morning, Your Highness." The prince nonchalantly covers his eyes with one hand, still relaxing on the armrest. He peeks through his fingers with a sly grin, excitedly declaring that he's hit the jackpot. In a brief flashback, a younger, grittier Arya stares ahead with a determined look and a smudge on her forehead. A thought bubble reveals that hitting the jackpot for the prince means dealing with this trash. The room is a mess of paper airplanes made from official documents, with the prince lounging on the sofa while Arya sits diligently at her desk. Clearly annoyed, Arya looks up from her work and asks the prince how long he intends to keep up his childish behavior. She holds up a drawing of the prince fleeing his duties, sarcastically noting the coincidence and her own displeasure at the extra work he causes. The prince simply responds with a charming, untroubled smile. "Task." Leaning back with his hands behind his head, he casually asks if her visit is about the guard arrangements, prompting an irritated reaction from Arya. He smiles with smug satisfaction, closing his eyes as if enjoying her frustration. With his sharp, menacing smile, Arya informs him that her plan is to ensure he can't escape his duties. She asks about the approaching deadline for selecting a bride, prompting a dismissive yeah from the lounging prince before she questions if he has even checked the list of candidates. She holds up one of the paper airplanes he made, a clear symbol of his negligence. As Arya examines a candidate's profile, the prince sits in the background, complaining that he's tired of this and just wants it over with. He nonchalantly tosses away the stack of candidate profiles. Arya lunges forward in a panic, shouting at him and demanding to know what he is doing. She desperately reaches out to stop him, yelling his title in alarm. The discarded documents abruptly burst into a raging fire. The flames intensify, completely consuming the important papers. An elderly king sits on a grand throne, gazing at a portrait of a handsome man and sadly murmuring the name, Julius. Yawn. Now standing before the king, the prince lets out a large yawn, thinking to himself that he got dragged into this mess. The king furiously points at a picture of Arya saving the prince, yelling that she's the only reason he was saved from the flames. He angrily orders the prince to go to the arranged meeting now, but the prince remains stubbornly impassive. Throwing a full-blown tantrum on the floor, the king demands to see his grandchild, while the prince coldly remarks that this is why he can't stand old people. The prince suddenly grabs an annoyed Arya from behind, playfully calling for the captain of the guards. Arya glares, her expression a mix of fury and intense irritation at his sudden embrace. Struggling in his arms, she reminds His Highness that this is his duty and demands he not drag her into it. The prince acts surprised, asking if she wants him to marry someone, to which Arya retorts that it would be better if he settled down quickly. His playful demeanor vanishes as he stares at her in shock, asking if she's serious. Arya grips his arm tighter, smiling as she confirms that anyone will do, as long as they care for the country. The prince's world shatters, his eyes wide with hurt and disbelief as he repeats her callous words. Anyone will do? Having heard her words, the prince holds a startled Arya from behind and firmly declares, "Okay, got it." He strides forward with purpose as the king and another official watch from the background. With a brilliant, charming smile, the prince holds up the king's crown and makes a stunning announcement. He'll get married. The king's eyes sparkle with stars, his face lighting up with pure, unadulterated joy. The prince gently places the oversized crown back onto the tiny king's head, while Arya watches, her expression unreadable. The small king now stares up at Arya, who looks back at him with a serious gaze. His playful demeanor gone, the king adopts a stern expression and commands, "Bring me the paperwork." The scene shifts to a grand, stately government building under a soft light. Thud. A heavy official seal is slammed down onto a document, marking it with finality. A grim-faced man with a shadowed eye reacts in utter shock, exclaiming, "What?" A council of officials stares at the document in disbelief, one man wondering if this could possibly be real. The lead official slams his fist on the table and bellows, "Approved," sending the entire room into a wild celebration. Outside, Arya stretches with a deeply satisfied smile, clearly pleased with the official approval. A crowd of townsfolk notices her triumphant celebration in the distance, remarking on the commotion she's causing. Sensing the eyes on her, Arya turns, her happy expression faltering as she sees the watching crowd. Lost in a cosmic haze of confusion, a cat-eared caricature of Arya questions the strange turn of events. Back in the palace, a guard greets Arya, but she returns the sentiment with a menacing good morning, radiating a terrifying, dark aura. The guard and his bald companion tremble in fear before the sheer intensity of their captain's ominous presence. With her eyes closed, Arya calmly enters a room, the sound of the door moving accompanying her. Inside, her guards, led by the blue-haired prince and the orange-haired man, are throwing a wild party with confetti and horns. A festive graphic bursts onto the screen, reading, "Congratulations." Arya stands frozen, completely bewildered as a shower of celebratory flowers rains down upon her. The guards continue their joyful parade, cheering and holding a banner with German congratulations. Dazed and surrounded by petals, Arya confusedly asks what the celebration is for. The orange-haired guard bursts into tears of overwhelming joy. He tearfully explains the reason for his happiness. The prince and his beloved captain are finally getting married. Arya presses a hand to her forehead in exasperation, convinced this is just another one of the prince's terrible jokes. The prince cheerfully informs her that the news is already buzzing through the entire castle, much to her disbelief. A wave of excitement spreads as 4 other guards are shown celebrating the news. Looming behind a horrified Arya with a wicked grin, the prince confirms her worst fears as she thinks, "Damn it." The orange-haired guard tearfully insists to a zoned-out Arya that she and the prince are a perfect match. Annoyed, Arya slaps his hands away and flatly asks him to explain in what way they are a match. The guard collapses, but his genie-like spirit rises, wishing them happiness while his body shouts about thick beginnings. The guards perform a bizarre ritual, holding a spirit version of the prince over a small fire as Arya watches in horror. She stares at the strange scene, her expression a perfect mask of utter bewilderment. The prince rushes to the collapsed guard's side, desperately pleading with his captain to realize the truth of the situation. He passionately declares that she is the only one who can handle him, and he is the only one for her. Arya gives him a strained, chilling smile and dismisses his heartfelt plea as completely untrue. With the title card displayed, Arya is seen walking away, putting distance between herself and the chaos. Fuming, she mutters, "Seriously," under her breath, clearly at the end of her rope. The prince catches her again, wrapping his arms around her and leaning in close with a taunting smile. He dangles a small red object before her, playfully asking why she's spacing out. With a dangerous glint in her eyes, Arya asks if something good happened, her thoughts repeating over and over in frustration. Wham! She snaps, delivering a sharp headbutt that sends the prince reeling and shouting, "Annoying!" The prince recovers, a subtle smile playing on his lips as he thinks to himself, she has improved. He confronts her as a demonic aura surrounds her, questioning if her eyes are even working properly. He shoves a crumpled document in her face, exclaiming, "This!" Arya snatches the paper from his hand, furiously demanding to know what he thinks he's doing. The prince maintains his calm, smiling demeanor, innocently asking what she means. She accuses him of taking a joke too far, worrying about public perception, but he calmly states it's not a misunderstanding. The prince cheerfully points out that Arya stamped the marriage document herself, while she thinks that this will be tough to cover up. Looking horrified, Arya reminds him that he was supposed to marry a noble lady. Rip! He tears the official document in half. Leaning in close amidst a shower of flowers, the prince smugly asks who was the one who said that. Shoving him away, Arya pleads with him to stop this nonsense. With a brilliant, confident smile, he simply replies, "Yep." Arya grabs the prince, her face a terrifying ventriloquist's mask, as she laments that this is all her fault and begs for forgiveness. Her shadowed face breaks into a creepy, teeth-baring grin as she laughs maniacally. Her gloved hand firmly grips the hilt of her sword. Now on his knees before her, the prince desperately tells her to wait. With a sly wink, he proposes they play a game. Arya stares back in shock, asking him what he means. He casually explains that his father is so excited, he's already set the wedding for 6 months from now. Her eyes widen in despair as she realizes there is truly no escape. Her finger taps the hilt of her sword, a spark of resolve in her eyes. The prince offers a challenge. If she can beat him in a match before the wedding, he'll cancel the whole thing. Her eyes light up with sudden hope and surprise at his offer. He leans forward with a confident grin, asking for her answer. Overwhelmed by the situation, Arya looks on, unable to speak. A flashback reveals the prince's history as a genius holy knight, chosen by the Holy Sword at just 5 years old. His genius is further highlighted, showing him excelling in the arts as he performs a violin solo for a captivated audience. Arya looks on with a troubled expression, processing the daunting truth of his skills. The prince gives her a confident, charming wink. "Tisk?" Laughing, he taunts her for being a swordsman, causing Arya to seethe with rage. Turning her back on him, she calmly addresses him as "Your Highness." With a menacing smile, Arya suggests they change locations, her inner self fuming with rage. The light blue-haired guard and the orange-haired guard sit together, watching the confrontation unfold. The duel begins as Arya lunges forward, their swords clashing in a blur of motion. As her massive sword is driven into the ground, the prince stands casually while the two guards applaud from the sidelines. She angrily points at the guards, demanding to know why they aren't at their posts. The orange-haired and light blue-haired guards cheerfully announce that they are off duty. With a determined glare, Arya raises her sword, ready for another attack. The prince easily parries her next strike with a confident smile. Their intense gazes lock, their faces reflected on the crossed blades. Hup! He swiftly counters, and their blades clash once more in a flurry of motion. Crash! The force of his attack sends Arya flying backward into a wall of crates, which shatters on impact. Before she can fall, the prince swiftly moves in and catches her from behind. He holds her securely, as a whirlwind of energy surrounds them. They stand together amid the destruction, the prince protectively holding Arya. He looks down at her with a serious expression as she stares up, wide-eyed and stunned. His serious demeanor melts into a charming smile as he holds the flustered Arya in his arms. A close-up shows Arya's face, flushed and completely bewildered by the sudden turn of events. The prince smiles gently down at her. Carried by his retainers, the furious king screams the prince's name, Julius, and demands to know how many times he plans to destroy the castle. Now identified as Julius, the prince grins wickedly while holding a horrified and exhausted Arya. As Arya bends over, panting from exhaustion in a sunny courtyard, Julius laughs heartily. Still catching her breath, she miserably mutters that she has to write an incident report. Julius cheerfully declares that they're accomplices, prompting Arya to yell back that he knew he was dragging her into this. Overwhelmed by despair, Arya shrinks down, wishing the world would just sink already. Leaning in, Julius makes a shocking request for a hot kiss, causing Arya to recoil and shout, "Huh!" Julius playfully asks if she thought there was no penalty for losing, while Arya protests she never heard about one. He smugly replies that she didn't ask, prompting her to think his reasoning is nonsense. As a chibi version of Arya cries in frustration, Julius taunts her, questioning if a famous swordsman can't take responsibility. Horrified, Arya realizes he is casually demanding the worst possible penalty. Julius gives her a sly, expectant smile and asks, "What now?" Steeling herself, a flustered Arya declares she'll do it, to which he simply replies, "Yup." She closes the distance between them, her gloved hand resting on his chest. Their boots stand toe-to-toe as they draw closer. Surrounded by a bloom of flowers, Arya presses her lips against his in a soft kiss. She pulls back slightly, a look of confusion on her face. Reeling in shock, she stares as Julius touches his face. Licking his lips with a provocative smile, he whispers, "Bon appetit!" Wham! Arya delivers a powerful slap, sending his head whipping to the side. A single tear falls from his eye as he exclaims, "Ouch!" Completely flustered and blushing, Arya covers her mouth amidst a sea of flowers. She tells Julius his teasing is going too far. Framed by flowers, she presses him, asking what he's implying. Julius leans in and gently kisses her on the cheek. He whispers into her ear as he kisses her. A voice echoes through a cosmic void, asking if she finally noticed. A groggy Arya peeks over the edge of her bed, looking dazed. Her eyes snap open in a moment of sudden, stark realization. Now outside, she looks toward a tall tower and confusedly asks, "Notice what?" She rubs her sleepy eyes, still trying to process her thoughts. A fleeting memory shows her younger self being gently held in water. Her thoughts reveal a vision of a demonic king, realizing Julius acts just like him when he's having fun. Shaking off the strange thoughts, Arya splashes her face with cold water from a bucket. Dressed in a fine vest, Julius stands casually in the courtyard. He's suddenly interrupted by something flying past, making him choke in surprise as he asks, "Huh?" The tiny king flies toward Julius, desperately crying for his foolish son to help him as the prince asks what he's doing. A blur of motion streaks across the courtyard. High above, Arya is seen leaping through the air, heading straight for Julius. Panicked, she realizes her trajectory and yells for His Highness to dodge. Julius calmly reaches up and catches her wrist in midair. He effortlessly spins her around, greeting her with a casual yo. Holding her bridal style, Julius looks down with a confident smile. He smugly thinks his fiancée has fallen right into his arms, but a furious Arya screams at him for being in the way and demands he let her go. Feigning shock, he cheekily refuses as she glares at him. Still held in his arms, she struggles and insists this is no time for his games. The source of the commotion is revealed. An escaped white tiger is rampaging through the castle with the king in its mouth as a guard shouts for help. Holding Arya, Julius glances at the chaos and coolly remarks that it all makes sense now. Arya stares in utter shock at the unbelievable scene unfolding before her. Julius looks on from behind her with a sly, amused smile. The white tiger continues its mad dash across the castle grounds with the king. The tiger holds the terrified, dangling king firmly in its jaws. A terrifying aura surrounds Arya as she glares with glowing red eyes, startling the tiger. In a flash, a powerful force strikes the tiger's head. The impact sends the king flying from the stunned tiger's mouth. The small king comically bounces through the air like a pinball. Well, that's one way to get off a wild ride. Arya catches the disoriented king and asks if he's okay as Julius runs past them. With an intense, determined look, Julius rushes forward. He comes to a sudden stop before the white tiger, which looks up at him cautiously. The tiger glares, its eyes glowing with feral intensity. Julius stands in profile, calmly and silently assessing the beast before him. With a ferocious roar, the white tiger bares its fangs. Thump! He plants his foot firmly on the ground, standing his ground. The tiger's aggression instantly vanishes, replaced by a look of sheer terror as it begins to sweat. A close-up of Julius's eye reveals a powerful, glowing blue aura. An immense, spectral blue dragon with glowing red eyes materializes behind Julius, completely intimidating the terrified tiger. Julius points a single, commanding finger at the cowering tiger. Overcome with fear, the tiger's eye widens as sweat pours down its face. His intimidation display over, Julius gently places a hand on the now docile tiger's head. He gives the calmed tiger a few affectionate pats, its demeanor completely changed. Now sitting beside the friendly beast, Julius tells the tiger he doesn't dislike it, calling it a noble creature. Arya watches the scene unfold as the king and his retainers kneel in the background, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. Julius tells the tiger it was abandoned with broken fangs, and Arya's expression softens with empathy. A brief, tender memory shows Julius gently touching a younger Arya's forehead. Noticing Arya's gaze, Julius stops petting the tiger and turns to her, asking what's wrong. He then moves his hand from the tiger and places it on Arya's head, much to her surprise. Julius playfully holds up a fluffy purple cushion. Whap! A furious Arya slaps his hand away, demanding to know what he's doing. He claims he thought she wanted the cushion, but a tiny chibi Arya furiously refutes him. Arya stares at him, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. Turning her back, she curtly announces that she is now off duty and walks away. Julius watches her leave with a knowing smile, remarking that she's as tough as ever. In a flash, he appears behind her, wrapping her in a sudden embrace amidst a shower of flowers. He pulls her in close, his face just inches from hers as she looks away. Flustered, holding the red ribbon from her uniform, he whispers, reminding her not to forget their arrangement. Arya walks alone down a long, sunlit corridor, lost in thought. She closes her eyes with a weary sigh, clearly troubled. Her thoughts drift back to Julius holding her, his voice echoing as he wonders what he should make her do. Their intense, conflicting emotions are shown in a split view of their determined eyes. In a moment of frustration, she grabs his face and pulls his cheek. Annoyed, she continues to hold on to him while he nurses his face. He offers her the blue gem brooch attached to its red ribbon. Snatching the ribbon from his hand, Arya glares at him with irritation. She pauses before a door bearing the name Winterheart, contemplating her next move. Opening the door to her room, she stops, stunned by the scene inside. Two maids pass by, carrying a basket overflowing with what appears to be her laundry. Another maid follows, carrying a large box filled with Arya's books and personal effects. Arya greets the maids with a bright, albeit confused, smile as they bustle around her. She glances at the nameplate on her door, Arya von Winterheart. A maid accidentally bumps into her, startling the already confused Arya. Overwhelmed, Arya watches as a flurry of maids rushes past, remarking on how fast they are. The maid's gone, she stands alone in her now completely empty room. A bewildered chibi Arya asks, as she slowly realizes what this means. Julius cheekily explains from her bed, cuddling the tiger, that since the tiger is staying, she has to leave. I've been kicked out of my room? She thinks in utter rage. Her furious scream echoes from the castle walls. Damn you, your highness! Meanwhile, the white tiger looks perfectly content and blissful in its new home. The king, too, looks utterly pleased, resting his chin on his hands with a happy, carefree smile. Looks like his problem is solved. The happy white tiger plays in its lavish new room as the tiny king recovers under his own oversized crown. An exhausted blue-haired man thanks someone for their hard work, as Arya stands beside him, equally drained. Arya agrees with a sigh that a lot has happened, looking weary from the day's events. With a sinister smile and glowing eyes, Arya thinks she just wanted to have a little chat with His Highness. Whirling around with furious energy, she angrily calls out for the prince. A flamboyant Julius appears in a dazzling outfit, holding a rose in his teeth and declaring, "My honey!" A chibi Arya looks on with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. Blushing with frustration, she confronts him, demanding to know what kind of cosplay he's wearing. He winks charmingly and announces that he is a thief, here to steal her heart tonight. Julius points at the unimpressed Arya, finding her deadpan reaction incredibly annoying. As Arya storms down a long hall demanding answers, Julius follows, complaining that she's being harsh after he changed just for her. She whirls on him, furiously reminding him that she was kicked out of her room. With a smug smile, Julius gestures toward a grand entrance, while Arya looks on in disbelief. He reveals an unbelievably opulent and luxurious suite, leaving her speechless. Stunned by the sheer scale of the room, Arya exclaims that it's huge as Julius proudly presents it. He calmly informs the astonished Arya that from now on, she will be staying here instead of the barracks. As three maids bow, he adds that her meals will be delivered and her every need will be tended to. A flustered chibi Arya looks trapped between two maids who are smiling at her with unsettling eagerness. Now in a beautiful dress, Arya thinks the situation is strange, certain that, knowing the prince, there has to be a catch. Despite being pampered with fine meals and luxurious baths, she remains deeply suspicious, searching for his ulterior motive. Lying in her new, comfortable bed, she drifts off to sleep, still thinking there must be something more to his plan. A sleepy chibi Arya dozes off, her thoughts trailing away into silence. Her eyes suddenly snap wide open with the shocking realization that absolutely nothing has happened. She reflects that the prince hasn't come to bother her and her laundry is already done, leaving her confused. In the dead of night, a barefoot Julius silently approaches her bed, his face illuminated by a single candle. He leans over her sleeping form, bracing his hand on the bed with a determined expression. Gently stroking her cheek, he wonders if it's truly okay for her to trust him so much. He then leans in and calmly snuffs out the candle flame with his bare fingers. A new day dawns, sunlight filtering through the branches of a tall tree. Arya sleeps peacefully, murmuring softly as the morning light fills the room. Stirring under the covers, her first thought is of the new day ahead. She snuggles deeper into her pillow, enjoying a moment of warmth and comfort. As she stirs, she detects an unfamiliar scent in the room, her brow furrowing in confusion. She opens her eyes to find a shirtless Julius sitting on her bed, casually wishing her a good morning. He flashes a charming smile and asks if she had a good dream. Arya stares in a silent, hazy daze, trying to make sense of the scene before her. Julius yawns and stretches, musing that it must have all been a dream for her. He leans over and pulls her into an embrace, playfully asking if she wants to enjoy the rest of it. He pulls back, a bit surprised by her complete lack of reaction. Standing up and stretching, he wonders how she can be so strong even while half asleep. He brushes his hair back with a wry, amused smile. Later, Julius calmly prepares a pot of tea by the window. He holds a beautifully decorated teacup, ready to serve it. Now sitting up in bed, a groggy Arya watches as Julius approaches with the tea, asking if she's awake. He gently offers her the warm cup and saucer. She accepts the tea, her expression soft and thoughtful as she takes it. She holds the warm cup in her hands, the steam rising gently. They sit together on the bed in a comfortable silence, both sipping their tea as she remarks on its warmth. Julius closes his eyes, a faint, contented smile on his lips. He gently pats her head, prompting her to look up in surprise as he asks if she likes the tea. Startled awake, Arya spills her tea as Julius points it out, asking if she's finally woken up. Her eyes widen in horror at his reply, "Since last night," as she stammers. "What?" He calmly points out that she's spilling her tea again, teasing her for being a royal guard captain who didn't notice him enter her room. Flustered, she insists that this only happens with him, and that normally she would notice an intruder right away. Placing a hand over hers, he smirks and tells her that he likes that. He gives her a devilishly charming smile. Arya stares back, utterly bewildered by his comment. She asks him to move his hand, but he refuses and abruptly changes the subject, asking which unit is handling the kidnapping case. The scene shifts to two knights discussing the case, noting that another nation is involved and the victims so far are only commoners. Back in the room, Julius takes a thoughtful sip of his tea. Now fully dressed in her uniform, Arya adjusts her collar as Julius heads for the window. As she prepares to leave with her sword, he tells her to leave the cup, wondering when she got ready so quickly. He gives a knowing wink, holding his teacup. Turning back with a smile amidst a field of flowers, she tells him the milk tea was delicious. He watches her go, a thoughtful expression on his face as he holds his tea. Taking another sip, he sighs. Seriously. He sets his cup down, deciding what to do next. With a stretch, he muses that he should try his best for the first time in a while. Elsewhere, outside a grand palace, a voice remarks that even the royal knights aren't that impressive. A blonde knight complains to his companion about the situation. Arya stands calmly before her new squad, a group of unimpressed-looking young men. The blonde knight scoffs that it's better than a fancy guard squad in name only, calling them a trash heap of troublemakers. He continues his tirade, sneering at the idea of having a woman as the boss. He confidently declares he'd never deal with her, even if it killed him, while his subordinates look on. Arya summons two of her new subordinates with a commanding gaze. She sighs in exasperation at the display of insubordination. The scene changes to a rowdy tavern, where a group of bandits cheer and drink. Their celebration is funded by their captives, a group of terrified, bound women. A brutish man boasts that they got lucky with an easy gig, thanking a mysterious woman who ensures no one in the country can touch them. An intense, ominous energy fills the air. A hand holds a small, mirrored device reflecting the image of the drunken, boastful bandit. Standing behind a kneeling Arya, Julius peers over her head as she uses the device, prompting her to ask why he stepped over her. She starts to explain the plan to her squad, but Julius cuts her off. Leaning back nonchalantly, he dismisses the need for a plan, claiming no one there looks tough. He simply tells his stunned squad to do whatever they want. The young knights react with a mix of shock, glee, and wicked excitement. With a menacing grin, Julius adds a single chilling command. Don't let anyone escape. An exasperated Arya looks on as her new squad eagerly discusses who gets to go first. Julius pats her head reassuringly, telling her not to care what happens, as they'll manage somehow. He cheekily proposes a competition to see who can take down the most, but a ticked-off Arya reminds him they're on duty. A hooded member of the squad watches them from below, having already moved into position. Inside the tavern, one of the bandits spots something outside and alerts his companion. A lone figure in a red hood and blue uniform walks confidently toward the bandit encampment. The red-hooded knight throws back his hood and bellows an enthusiastic greeting. The bandits sneer, impressed by his guts as they prepare to attack. One bandit lunges forward with a knife, shouting that the knight will regret this in the afterlife. The red-hooded knight effortlessly parries the attack with his massive sword. From the forest, the rest of the hooded squad emerges, ready for battle. The bandit leader stares in disbelief, demanding to know what's going on, as the knights weren't supposed to get involved. The white-haired knight draws his sword, his expression cool and focused as he joins the fray. From a safe distance, a delighted Julius claps as arrows fly, remarking how intensely his squad is fighting. The white-haired knight smirks as a bandit lunges, identifying him as the boss and shouting for him to die. In a flash of red, a pink-haired knight slits the bandit's throat with cold precision. The pink-haired knight and another squad member stand amidst the bloody aftermath of their swift attack. The bandit leader stares in horror, realizing they don't have the knight's emblem and demanding to know who they are. With a blood-soaked knife, the pink-haired knight stares down his enemies with lethal intensity. Blood splatters violently, marking the end of another bandit. Elsewhere, a blonde noble in a pristine uniform lets out a tired, indifferent yawn. As his squad walks by, one of his subordinates sneers at Julius's men, calling one a tax thief. Ugh. The sneering knight is suddenly sent flying by a powerful punch to the face. A blonde commander in an ornate uniform furiously orders his men to salute. As the squad snaps to attention, the punched knight holds his jaw, wondering why Julius's troublemakers are in the guard squad. The blonde commander's eyes widen in shock as a hand claps down onto his shoulder. A promotional image reveals the strongest knights of the empire, a brash swordsman, a quiet scholar, the pink-haired knight, and a winking Julius. A mysterious woman with long white hair and striking red eyes observes silently. A polite-looking man with short white hair offers a gentle, knowing smile. Nodding with a slight smile, he confirms that he understands the situation. The white-haired woman turns, her back to the viewer as she regards the scene. The white-haired man's gentle smile vanishes, replaced by a look of wide-eyed shock. A new, cheerful man named Gleam appears, flashing a peace sign with a bright smile. The scene shifts to a lone, fog-shrouded house in the deep woods, as a voice suggests it's time to meet him. In the darkness, a rugged, dark-haired man brings a pipe to his lips. The mysterious man is revealed, his gaze intense, as he is identified only as that man. Back at the palace, Julius lets out a delicate, bored yawn. Julius asks a subordinate where Arya is, only to be told she has taken paid leave. Sprawled across a couch with his sword, a pouting Julius complains about how boring things are now. The light blue-haired subordinate watches him with an amused, knowing smirk. His amusement quickly turns to surprise, as he reacts with a confused, "Huh?" Julius stands and walks away with purpose, leaving his subordinate watching his sudden departure. His expression hardens with grim determination, his blue eyes fixed on a new goal. Elsewhere, Arya looks up with startled, wide eyes, a sense of urgency on her face. A 6-month time limit until the wedding is revealed as she walks purposefully through a forest. She recalls that the prince, the strongest in history, has only ever lost to one person. With new resolve, Arya makes her way through the misty woods toward a secluded cabin. She stands before the old wooden door, hesitating for a moment before approaching. The door creaks open, revealing a dark interior and the ominous shadow of the person inside. Peeking inside, she cautiously calls out for someone named Ritterhagen. From the darkness, Ritterhagen's voice instructs her not to use his last name. Startled, she apologizes and states her business to the man, who is lying on the floor in the dark. She declares she must defeat someone and asks him to take her as his disciple, but he curtly tells her to go home. Desperate, she begs him to wait and hear her out. He simply smirks from the shadows, declaring that he is a recluse. She looks on with a crestfallen and worried expression, his rejection sinking in. Looking utterly disheveled with flowers and twigs in his hair, Ritterhagen tells the young lady to find someone else. A black and white image shows a young girl looking lost and confused against a backdrop of space. A chibi Arya meekly apologizes for bothering him, but he suddenly shouts for her to wait. He cries dramatically about his hurt feelings, but she points out that he was the one who told her to leave. A brilliant idea suddenly strikes Arya, and she beams, saying, "Well then." A still disheveled Ritterhagen stares back at her, confused by her sudden change in demeanor. She grabs him by the collar, leaning in close with a new, determined glint in her eyes. A dark-haired knight with a purple aura reflects that while he was once a top knight, he's never taken a disciple. A disheveled, brown-haired man gasps in shock at the sight of a pink-haired girl behind him, as a narration hints at a sad, beautiful reason. The pink-haired girl kicks him, demanding he hear her out, but he dismisses her as someone troublesome. After he agrees to let her inside, she suddenly releases his leg, sending him flying as she yells at him not to let go so quickly. Slam! He hits the floor hard, begrudgingly admitting she's strong and finally inviting her to come in. As he slumps onto a couch, the pink-haired girl acknowledges to herself that he might be a bit silly. Looking at a box of his possessions, including a medal, she confirms that it is indeed him. The brown-haired man takes a drag from an ornate pipe and coolly asks the young lady who she is. She confidently identifies him as Prince Julius, to which he gives a short, dismissive, "Ha." He cracks his knuckles, seemingly preparing himself for what's to come. The pink-haired girl explains that she has her reasons, and, as a fellow swordsman, she can't give up. She bows deeply before him, pleading with him to make her his disciple. The scene shifts to a determined, white-haired young man running swiftly through a sunlit forest. The brown-haired man's voice addresses the young lady, her expression firm and resolved. Seeing how serious she is, his gaze intensifies as he considers her request. He leans over her and makes a shocking proposal. She'll have to pay with her body. Just then, the white-haired man from the forest appears, shouting, "Arya!" in alarm. The brown-haired man bursts into laughter while Arya stands behind him, blushing and completely flustered. The white-haired man stares at the bizarre scene, utterly confused. As the brown-haired man continues to laugh, Arya seems to be animatedly explaining something to him. She holds up a picture of a young white-haired boy, prompting a surprised "hey" from the man. The focus shifts to the picture, showing the young white-haired boy sitting on a bed. A sudden shift reveals the white-haired man standing behind them, shocking both Arya and the brown-haired man. A powerful scream echoes through the room. An enraged Arya turns on the white-haired man, demanding to know what he's doing there. He calmly returns her question, asking what she is doing there. The white-haired man now occupies the couch while Arya tends to the brown-haired man on the floor, who insists he didn't touch her. Brandishing a sword, Arya eagerly accepts the, quote, "pay with your body" offer, interpreting it as hard work, which makes the swordsman wonder who raised such a fool. Oof! The white-haired man grabs Arya and starts dragging her away as she protests. While being carried off, she defiantly shouts her full name, Arya von Winterhart. He carries her away as she vows to return no matter how many times it takes, much to his annoyance. The brown-haired swordsman watches them go with an amused and intrigued expression. He claims he hasn't held a sword in years, but Arya immediately shouts back that it's a lie. She argues that his sword is impeccably cared for, despite the filthiness of his room. She continues her keen observation, pointing out that his neatly groomed hands prove he hasn't skipped his daily training. The white-haired man calls her a tomboy as she sits on the floor, still determinedly trying to prove her point to the swordsman. Aha! The swordsman blushes and playfully asks if the white-haired man would get mad if he said this was all for a woman. The white-haired man overhears the question, "For a woman?" while Arya stares completely stunned. He glances back in surprise as Arya's face lights up with a sudden, brilliant idea. The swordsman warns her not to get her hopes up, clarifying that all she needs to do is win a fight against that guy. He leans in and tells her a secret. Her crown prince has a weakness, shocking Arya. A close-up of the prince's piercing blue eyes hints at something hidden beneath the surface. The swordsman grins, explaining that the first one to figure out the weakness is the winner. Arya gazes thoughtfully at the prince and the sword at his side. Confident in his plan, the swordsman declares that she will win because the prince would never admit to his weakness. The prince stands in thoughtful silence, his lack of response adding to the tension. He finally speaks, looking at her and asking, "What?" followed by a challenging, "satisfied." He suddenly grabs her arm and starts to pull her away, taking her by surprise. The swordsman watches them leave with a faint, knowing smile. From a high vantage point, someone wonders if their adversary truly thinks they would yield so easily. A brown-haired man in a military uniform laughs while holding a small, white-haired boy, thinking the brat is something else. Annoyed, the man turns away with a sigh, finding the situation tiresome. He stands with a stern expression as the small boy clings tightly to his leg. A close-up reveals the man's bewildered expression as he mutters in confusion. The small, white-haired boy looks up with wide, innocent eyes and calls the man old man. His earnest gaze remains fixed on the man, a slight blush on his cheeks. The boy continues to hug the man's leg as the man looks down, still processing the situation. Elsewhere, the boy's father, the emperor, frantically calls out for someone named Julius. The brown-haired man sweats, a nervous and mischievous smile on his face. He kneels before the boy, respectfully addressing him as Your Highness. Holding the young prince, he smiles warmly and advises him to bear with his troublesome parents until he's older. As he carries the boy away, he offers some gentle words of advice regarding his father. With a cold and dismissive glare, the young Prince Julius thinks to himself that the advice is useless. He confidently believes there's nothing in the world that can't go his way. Surrounded by a vibrant bed of yellow roses, Julius stands with a determined look in his eyes. Exasperated, the brown-haired man wonders aloud if he should just leave the difficult child to his own devices. He quickly changes his mind, dashing towards the seated boy and cheerfully announcing that he's found him. Time passes, and a slightly older Julius is seen sitting alone, engrossed in a book. As the brown-haired man lounges nearby, Julius questions what he could possibly learn from someone weaker than himself. Peeking over the book, the man feigns sadness, as Julius internally declares he doesn't need anyone. Calling the boy uncute, the man snatches the book, prompting a shocked Julius to demand it back. Gasp! Julius's eyes widen in disbelief at the sudden move. In a swift motion, the man flips the young prince onto his back. Looking down at the defeated boy with a victorious smirk, he holds up the book and declares his win. Julius lies on the ground, dazed and out of breath from the sudden takedown. The man walks away with the book held high, announcing that it's now confiscated. Outraged, Julius sits up and lets out a furious shout. A montage of memories shows Julius chasing the man, identified as Luca, and even using magic in his attempts to get his book back. Luca laughs uncontrollably at Julius's furious expression, telling himself to cut it out. Another man approaches, reminding Luca that he's dealing with the crown prince, but Luca insists this is exactly the kind of guidance he needs. A grand illustration portrays the lonely young prince, explaining his rough behavior stems from not knowing how to interact with others. Luca gives a knowing, mischievous wink. Suddenly, a cry of "Intruder!" rings out, and Luca's eyes snap open in alarm. As the alarm specifies the intrusion is in the crown prince's room, Luca is shown sprinting down a hall. He bursts through a doorway into a dark room, desperately calling out Julius's name. Luca's face contorts in pure horror at the scene before him. A chilling close-up reveals Julius's wide, glowing blue eyes, his face streaked with blood. Kneeling amidst bodies with a blood-soaked sword, Julius looks up as Luca stammers his name in disbelief. As Luca looks on in despair, Julius thinks to himself that in the end, Luca is still useless. Looking down on a beaten Luca, Julius coldly decides he doesn't need anyone weaker than him. The flashback ends on a close-up of Julius's cold eye, before transitioning to a starry expanse. In the present, the now adult, white-haired Julius stands with a stern expression as a pink-haired girl watches from behind. The pink-haired girl nervously tries to get his attention. A hint of a smirk plays on Julius's lips. The pink-haired girl looks on, uncertain of his mood as he turns toward her. Julius casually throws an arm around her, pulling her close with a relaxed swagger. He leans in with a confident smile, leaving her flustered by his sudden closeness. A comical flashback shows the young prince throwing a tantrum, refusing to sleep without a super high-class bed. Back in the present, the pink-haired girl clings to Julius as he casually says, "Well, whatever." Julius turns away, rubbing his eye as Arya stands behind him. He looks aside, his expression thoughtful and serious. Arya questions his defiance of an imperial decree, which he confirms is one everyone recognizes. Julius moves closer to Arya, their shoulders almost touching. He gently takes her gloved hand in his. Turning to face her, Julius asks quietly, "Am I not good enough?" Arya looks up at him, surprised, before bluntly replying, "No, you're not." His gentle expression remains, though his eyes seem to hold a flicker of disappointment. A confident smile spreads across Arya's face as she declares, "You're my rival." Julius's blue eyes widen in shock at her unexpected proclamation. Arya glares at him with puffed cheeks, annoyed by his reaction. The scene focuses on the back of his head, marking a shift in the mood. A moment later, Julius breaks into a wide, delighted grin. Elsewhere, A group of 5 knights in blue uniforms stands before a grand castle, looking stunned. With stars in her eyes, Arya happily announces she'll take the money without working, much to Julius's shock. A new, charismatic man with brown hair and green eyes offers a confident smirk. A man smoking a pipe offers a bag of gold to a hooded figure, ordering him to defeat a crown prince named Nightel. The hooded figure, a young man with black hair, gives a wicked grin, accepting the mission. The black-haired intruder sneaks through a palace hall, musing that infiltrating a peaceful castle is easy. With a mischievous smile, he wonders how to proceed. Suddenly, a voice shrieks for him to stop, and the startled intruder whips around in panic. The commotion is ignored by Julius, who blissfully enjoys a slice of pie as the intruder faces an enraged Arya. Wham! Arya slams her hand down in fury, shouting that the pie was made for her by Dater. A fond portrait of Dater holding the pie appears as Arya chases the fleeing Julius through the hall. Munching away, Julius taunts that even the pie wanted a handsome guy to eat it, infuriating a tiny Arya. Amidst the chaos, the black-haired intruder trips and tumbles through the gilded hallway. Looking up, he curses, wondering if they've already realized he's infiltrated the castle. He panics as he hears footsteps, realizing someone is approaching. A tiny king in oversized robes rushes through a doorway, wailing for Arya! The intruder hides, reminding himself that his target is the crown prince and he must lay low. Thump! The king trips over his long, ornate robe. The intruder watches from his hiding spot, shocked by the king's sudden fall. With a splat, the king lands face first on the polished floor. The king's face is comically squashed and electrified from the impact. As the king begins to cry, the intruder panics and waves his hands, telling him to wait. A guard shouts not to bully the king, and the intruder flees in terror, realizing his face has been seen. He finally slumps against a wall in a dark corridor, believing he's safe. Thud! He collapses to the floor, utterly exhausted and wondering what is wrong with this nation. A man with dark blue hair looms over him, demanding to know who he is, as the intruder screams in terror. Now tied up, the intruder struggles against his bonds. He looks back warily while still sitting on the floor, bound. A kind voice asks if he's all right as Arya offers him a hand, noting he's a commoner. Heart-thumping, the intruder blushes as Arya helps him, while Julius kneels nearby, looking defeated. The intruder's cheeks puff out in a pout. He suddenly shouts at Arya, protesting that she's being rude. She carries the dangling, protesting boy away as another knight looks on, bemused. Arya points at the boy with a warm smile, surrounded by a magical field of white lilies. Thump! The boy is struck by a metaphorical Cupid's arrow, his face flushing red. He sprints away at top speed as Arya claps her hands, cheering him on. That night, the scene shifts to the palace under a starry sky. The black-haired intruder scales the palace walls, furious that he was made a fool of. Peeking into a window, he sees Arya sleeping peacefully in a room filled with flowers. Doki! His heart pounds as he blushes, captivated by the sight of her. From inside the room, Julius watches with a knowing smirk. Julius sits awake beside Arya, who sleeps with her head on his lap, and quietly asks the intruder, "How was it?" Startled, the intruder freezes in a crouch just outside the window. With a cold gaze, Julius warns that if he had taken one more step, there would have been consequences. His hand rests firmly on the hilt of his sword, ready for action. Ugh. Terrified by the chilling threat, the intruder flees in a panic. Julius watches him go, confident the looming danger will keep the intruder away. He then gently lays the sleeping Arya down on the bed, only to be startled when she stirs. The intruder makes his escape down the side of the palace as a man in a carriage watches from below. In another room, a person clutching a teddy bear worries that their brother has a fiancé. A young girl with light blue hair and piercing blue eyes orders someone to summon her at once. Holding her bear, the girl looks around the room, vowing not to tolerate any nonsense in the castle. In a framed portrait, the elegant young noble calmly sips her tea. Arya appears before her, a tense and slightly unnerving smile on her face. The two sit opposite each other at a tea table in a sunlit room overlooking a field of lavender. As Arya nervously comments on the weather, the girl interrupts, reaching out to say, "Hey." She bluntly states her dislike for the jam being served. A maid quickly attends to the young noble's complaint while Arya looks on. The girl holds a unique teacup, designed with little bear ears. A formal introduction reveals her identity, Yuno Tehore Rosenberg, her Imperial Highness. Arya is left speechless by the princess's directness. Princess Yuno simply stares back with wide, innocent blue eyes. A nearby maid silently wonders how a mere subordinate could be engaged to the prince. Arya listens with a calm, patient smile. Yuno reflects that, as his only sibling, she cannot ignore her guard's distraction from her duties. Arya's expression becomes serious as she prepares to speak. She explains to Princess Yuno that she has served Prince Julius for 5 years. With conviction, she declares her intent to continue dedicating herself to him as his subordinate. The princess's eye widens in utter shock at the word dedicating. Mortified, Yuno misunderstands, believing Arya means to dedicate herself as his wife. Flustered, she realizes she was wrong to assume her brother had forced Arya into an engagement. Staring intently, Yuno sees that Arya is completely serious about her dedication. She panics, unable to believe anyone would actually want to marry her brother. Clinging to her teddy bear, Yuno asks weakly if Arya is truly serious. Arya's expression hardens as she prepares to clarify her stance. In a sudden flashback, a blonde man yanks Yuno's teddy bear away while shouting about her willingness to die for that guy. Overwhelmed, Princess Yuno faints backward as a shocked Arya rushes to catch her. Arya catches the princess, worriedly asking if she is all right. Looking up with tear-filled eyes, Yuno desperately asks if there is any way to save Arya. Arya holds the limp princess, surprised by her sudden collapse and strange plea. From another room, Julius casually remarks that his sister Yuno has always been odd, prompting Arya to yell back in frustration. Yuno suddenly grabs Arya, pleading with her not to throw her life away on a man she calls a calamity. With tears in her eyes, she begs Arya to reconsider. Unaware of the drama unfolding, Julius calmly enjoys a fruit tart. Yuno points towards Julius's room, her expression filled with dismay. The princess looks down, her face a mask of worry and sadness for Arya's future. Startled, a blue-streaked man sits at a table as a terrifying, shadowy figure with glowing eyes looms behind him. In a violent vision of divine retribution, a gloved hand seizes the man's collar while the pink-haired knight is sent flying. A close-up reveals the pink-haired knight's fiercely determined eyes. The scene shifts to a small, white-haired girl in a pink dress, clutching a teddy bear with tears in her eyes. Carrying a slice of cake, the pink-haired knight Arya approaches, stating that she has reconsidered her position. She kneels before the little girl, offering her the dessert with a gentle smile. Arya warmly presents the strawberry cake, her expression kind and inviting. The little girl's eyes fill with hearts as she looks at the cake in absolute delight. Her teddy bear now holds the plate with the delicious-looking cake. Overjoyed, the little girl gives the surprised knight a kiss on the cheek. The girl beams with happiness, her sweet gesture having won the day. A small, robed king wonders aloud if Arya is going to become his daughter Yuno's personal knight. Radiating cuteness, Yuno claps her hands and adorably threatens her father, telling him to let her do it or she'll hate him. Her father recoils in mock terror, thinking her threat is truly scary. The blue-streaked man Noah stands beside a smug-looking Yuno and asks the king for his decision. The king's eyes bulge in shock, completely floored by the situation. In the throne room, Arya watches the royal family from a distance, wondering how things escalated so quickly. Throwing a tantrum, Yuno declares she hates it and tells Noah and a gray-haired man to decide on their own. Yuno pauses mid-tantrum, covering her mouth as she thinks of a new plan. An image of a masquerade ball appears as a new condition is set. The best dance partner at the ball will be chosen. Yuno points decisively, declaring the winner will be deemed the most suitable as Arya's official master. When she looks again, The gray-haired man has vanished, leaving Yuno surprised. Noah expresses his confusion while Arya pleads internally not to be dragged into their sibling quarrels. Her plan in motion, a gleeful Yuno happily skips down the grand staircase. She comes to a stop right in front of Arya, their different shoes highlighting their contrasting roles. Yuno gently takes Arya's gloved hand in her own. Pressing Arya's hand to her cheek, Yuno gives a charming and completely disarming wink. Arya flushes, overwhelmed by a powerful cuteness attack. As Yuno leaves with her maid, she tells them to call for Noah, while Arya waves a weary but fond goodbye. Noah looks on as a blushing Arya tells him she has no idea what just happened. Holding a sleeping Yuno, the gray-haired man explains she is stubborn while asking what the others are talking about. The white-haired crown prince appears, winking as he suggests that Arya should participate in the dance competition too. Arya is utterly shocked by his suggestion, pointing at herself in disbelief. He playfully suggests they can start recruiting partners now, showing a ridiculous vision of him being mobbed by applicants, which horrifies Arya. With a confident smirk, the crown prince declares that the matter is settled. He turns and walks away, beckoning for her to follow him into the grand hall. Watching him go, Arya sighs and notes that he and his younger sister are quite alike. He turns back, feigning surprise, and asks what she means, insisting he's very thoughtful. Later, in a moonlit room, the two stand together by a piano, preparing for a dance lesson. He looks down at her with wide eyes, utterly surprised by what he's experiencing. As they stumble through the steps, he bluntly tells her she has no talent, and she begs him not to say it so loudly. Her high-heeled shoes wobble precariously, making him feel like he's watching a newborn fawn trying to stand. Blushing with embarrassment, Arya protests that she's never been properly taught to dance, unlike him. He looks at her with a serious expression, asking if she truly believes he ever took proper dance lessons. With a swift, graceful movement, he dips her perfectly, proving his natural talent. He leans in close, revealing he learned just by watching the instructor, which only annoys her more. As he holds her gaze, she tells herself to focus on her balance, trying to ignore his unnerving proximity. He suggests they take a little break, and they sit together by a large, moonlit window. Kneeling before her, he recounts how his mother believed higher heels made her feel stronger. As he kneels to adjust her shoe, Arya exclaims in shock that he has a mother, to which he dryly retorts, "What do you think I am?" Still flustered, she asks if he even had a childhood, but he simply reminds her she saw the pictures and laughed at them just the other day. He closes his eyes for a moment, his expression unreadable as he tends to her foot. His eyes snap open, glowing with a sudden and intense blue light. Holding her ornate red heel, he menacingly asks if she's sure she can maintain her defiant attitude. In a sudden move, he shoves her backward onto a nearby sofa, startling her. They stare at each other, faces inches apart, her expression shocked and as dangerously intense. In the moonlit room, he continues to hold her down, repeating that the penalty for the match at Luca's house is still pending. Stunned by his actions, she weakly questions him, her voice barely a whisper. A close-up on his piercing blue eye reveals his unwavering seriousness. He pulls back abruptly and turns away, leaving a tense silence between them. Turning back toward her, his expression softens with a hint of concern. He stands over her and gently asks if she is all right. With a faint, complicated smile, he turns away from her once more. He walks toward the door, leaving her to sit up on the sofa, watching him go. Bam! The door shuts, leaving Arya alone and bewildered in the quiet room. The scene shifts to a grand festival, with carriages arriving at a palace square as fireworks explode in the night sky. Wah! An orange-haired man weeps dramatically, exclaiming how stunning someone looks, while the blue-haired Aldrich looks on in awe. Arya is revealed in a magnificent red and white ball gown, looking regal and beautiful amidst a shower of flowers. Splat! Trying to calm the sobbing man, she insists it's just a ball and no reason to exaggerate, as Aldrich holds him back. Aldrich smiles warmly as he presents her with an elegant red masquerade mask. She graciously accepts the mask from him, offering a simple thank you, as the other man continues to cry at her feet. Bam! Startled, Arya turns as the crown prince suddenly appears behind her, wearing a striking black and gold mask. She glares at him with an annoyed expression, clearly unimpressed by his dramatic entrance. Dressed in a magnificent formal uniform, he mockingly calls her a wild horse in a dress. Earning an exasperated look, he gives her a charming, confident wink from behind his mask. While Aldrich watches with a smile, the crown prince and an unamused Arya exchange words. He gently takes the red mask from her hands. Leaning close, he tells her she wouldn't believe him if he called her beautiful anyway, as he prepares to place the mask on her face. She shouts an emphatic, "Yes!" confirming his statement with comical, angry frustration. He simply smiles, amused by her predictable and fiery response. He suddenly strikes a series of dramatic dance poses, declaring that actions speak louder than words, leaving her utterly dumbfounded. Taking her arm, he leads her toward the ballroom as Aldrich and the other man watch, with Aldrich remarking that he's serious. They descend the stairs into the grand hall, where elegantly dressed couples are already dancing. As they enter the ballroom, Arya looks across the crowd and notes that their targets have arrived. While they stand together, a mysterious gloved hand is shown as a voice notes that the guards are at their most relaxed at this time of year. Nearby, the young blonde boy and the blue-haired Yuno greet another masked couple with polite curtsies. Aldrich, now also masked, approaches them with a glass of champagne on a tray. Tapping the glass, Aldrich leans in and quietly asks if they should check the results of their plan. The crown prince and Arya, now both masked, share a knowing glance as they survey the party. He leads her toward the dance floor, observing that it's empty and proposing they begin their, quote, match. They take their positions on the dance floor, holding each other in a formal dance embrace. A rule for their dance is set. The first person to let go of the other's hand will lose. Arya looks up at him from behind her mask, her expression intent and ready for the challenge. The crown prince returns her gaze with a confident, knowing smile. Elsewhere on the floor, Yuno dances with the blonde boy, thinking confidently that she will never lose at dancing. Kya! Two ladies in the crowd watch Yuno's performance with clasped hands and delighted squeals. Yuno and her partner execute a flawless and elegant dance move, captivating the audience. A close-up reveals a white-masked man with white hair, smiling as he winks at the ongoing dance competition. Princess Yuno peers through an ornate white mask, a hint of mischief in her bright blue eyes. At a masquerade ball, a silver-haired man in a black mask joyfully spins a woman with long pink hair. The silver-haired man laughs, apologizing to onlookers for his partner's over-the-top enthusiasm. Dizzy from the constant spinning, the pink-haired woman looks utterly overwhelmed. From the sidelines, a man in a dark suit and black mask watches the dancing couple with interest. A red heel pivots sharply on the dance floor, a testament to the dance's intensity. A black-clad couple dances with fierce passion, contrasting with the graceful, flowing movements of the pink-haired woman and her partner. The silver-haired man smiles warmly at his partner, complimenting her nice footwork. Annoyed, she demands he take the dance seriously, questioning if this chaotic display is the result of his practice. As other couples drop out from exhaustion, a bystander notes that only two pairs remain on the floor. The man continues to spin the pink-haired woman like a top, prompting Yuno to watch in disbelief and ask what they are doing. Yuno is completely flustered, wondering if their chaotic dance is what people consider, quote, passionate. A young, blonde-haired man in a green mask turns to Yuno, asking if she is all right. Yuno reassures him she is fine, while in the background, the spinning continues unabated, sending other dancers flying. Gathering her resolve, Yuno tells herself to focus and perform just as she always does. She plants her armored boots firmly, ready to begin her own dance. Her partner takes her hand, and they begin to dance with fierce determination. Her gloved hand rests securely on her partner's waist as they move across the floor. As they dance, Yuno catches a glimpse of the pink-haired woman twirling past her. The pink-haired woman flashes a confident, knowing smile from behind her elaborate red mask. Feeling faint, Yuno begs her partner to stop spinning, just as the pink-haired woman finally collapses onto the floor. Yuno looks up at her partner, her cheeks flushed and her expression slightly dazed. An announcer declares Yuno and her partner the winners of the Best Partner Award for their graceful dance. Much to their surprise, standing in the spotlight, the two accept their award while the silver-haired man and pink-haired woman watch from a balcony above. The man consoles his partner, admitting they lost but insisting the contest was rigged. He explains that the royal family is guaranteed to win as soon as that kid participates. He continues, stating no one would dare vote against the royals, as Yuno and her partner are showered with praise. He calmly concludes that Yuno will learn about these unspoken rules as she gets older. Seeing the horrified expression on the pink-haired woman's face, he simply comments on her look. She stares back at him, acknowledging that what he said might be the truth. He gazes at her with a soft, knowing smile from behind his mask. Suddenly, a voice shouts up at them from the ballroom floor, startling the pair. They are unexpectedly awarded the most memorable spin award and summoned down to the stage. Panicked, the pink-haired woman insists they have to escape, as her partner begins to pull her away. He firmly grabs her hand, ready to make a quick exit from the balcony. Without hesitation, he leaps over the railing, heading for the ballroom floor below. He lands perfectly, carrying the surprised pink-haired woman in his arms like a princess. The guests watch in awe as the couple makes their grand, unscheduled appearance. She calls him a show-off, but he only responds with a charming, self-satisfied smirk. Two ladies in the crowd swoon as the couple stands before a brightly lit exit. Surrounded by an aura of roses, he leans in and gives her a surprise kiss. The next morning, a cheerful Julius, now unmasked and in a formal suit, bursts into a room with a loud, "Good morning," crack. A gloved fist clenches with immense power, shattering rocks into pieces. Julius flinches as a stray piece of rock flies past his head and shatters a window. He turns to find Arya and an orange-haired knight at a table, calmly sorting rocks, and asks what they are doing. The knight happily explains that Captain Arya is helping them make gravel for the garden. Julius stares blankly as Arya assures the knight it's no trouble, prompting Julius to dryly note her many hobbies. Arya explains that helping others is only natural, and thinking of someone's face inspires her to do these things. As she smiles sweetly and crushes another rock, a horrifying image of her masked persona flashes in her mind. Julius cuts in, interrupting her courting session by bluntly asking if her brain has rotted. With a sly smirk, Julius informs an unseen person that a princess even more troublesome than him is calling for them. A playful graphic illustrates the outcome. Yuno wins, Julius loses, and a blindfolded Arya wonders if she's the prize. As a gloved hand takes hers, she nervously asks him to wait. Yuno beams, complimenting someone's outfit but insisting they can find something even cuter. Before Arya can protest about her duties, an excited Princess Yuno grabs her hand and pulls her away. Julius watches them leave, privately amused that his sister succeeded in getting Arya into a dress. A knight with light blue hair reports to Julius, who asks him to cover Arya's duties for the day. Julius cheekily informs the knight his new duty is babysitting, leaving the man utterly confused. Whoosh! In a sudden movement, Julius flings his jacket off, startling the knight. Now in a stylish disguise, Julius crouches on the balcony railing, deciding to join in on the fun. The stunned knight is left holding the jacket, shouting in disbelief after his highness. With a nimble leap, Julius makes his grand exit from the palace balcony. He lands gracefully in a carriage below, as the tiny figure of the knight frantically orders a pursuit from above. Their elegant carriage arrives at a charming cafe, marking the start of their day out. Arya's eyes light up with pure joy as a beautiful afternoon tea set is served. While Yuno chats happily with a maid, a wide-eyed Arya sits frozen in the background, looking completely stunned. Arya nervously spots Julius at another table and realizes he has followed them incognito. Princess Yuno laughs with pure, uninhibited delight, enjoying her time. Overwhelmed by the princess's cuteness, both Arya and a nearby maid are utterly charmed. Yuno sips her tea and calmly announces that Lady Arya will now be her exclusive knight. Arya is left completely speechless by the unexpected declaration. Composing herself, Arya offers a deep curtsy, stating she is deeply honored by the request. However, she gently explains that her loyalty has already been sworn to Prince Julius. She firmly concludes that she cannot go against her oath, formally declining the princess's offer. Yuno confidently counters, stating that her brother doesn't need a bodyguard. Arya listens with a soft, patient smile on her face. She proudly explains that the guard unit swore loyalty to Julius of their own free will, a bond that once saved them all. Arya's unwavering conviction seems to move the young princess. From his table, Julius interjects with a knowing smile, telling Yuno to give it up. A close-up on his sharp blue eyes reveals his utter confidence in Arya's loyalty. With the matter settled, Arya rises from her seat at the elegant tea table. Julius speaks his sister's name with a tone of finality, ending the discussion. Leaning forward with a self-satisfied expression, Julius looks pleased with the outcome. Clinging to her bear, Yuno reluctantly concedes, agreeing to back down for now. She glares at her brother, vowing that even though she's yielding this time, she has not given up. As the sun sets, Yuno departs in a carriage filled with presents from her outing. Exhausted from the day's excitement, the princess dozes off in her seat. Arya lets out a huge yawn, clearly tired, while Julius cheekily mimics her expression behind her. Catching him, Arya realizes he knew her answer all along, a fact he casually confirms. With a deadpan look, Arya tells him he has bad taste. Julius simply smirks and smoothly changes the subject. His gloved hand gently closes around hers. Back in her knight's uniform, Arya stares downward, lost in silent thought. A memory surfaces of a masquerade ball, where she danced intimately with a masked Julius. The memory focuses on a delicate hand holding an elegant fan. She then recalls dancing with a masked Yuno, admitting to herself that she lost that particular competition. In another memory, Julius presents her with a ring, commanding her to never take it off. Back in the present, Arya looks at the ring on her finger, thinking it's surprisingly plain for a gift from a prince. In the trading yard, she stands alone, still contemplating the simple ring. Crack! She tests its durability with a casual punch, shattering a stone wall to pieces. The pink-haired girl stares in shock at her glowing hand, realizing it's completely unharmed. A brown-haired man with a sword at his hip lets out a tired yawn. She runs up to him, gesturing wildly and telling him to listen as he asks what she's been doing. He sighs, calling her a troublesome child as she explains that a normal ring would have broken from her grip. He takes her hand to get a closer look at the small, glowing ring on her finger. Wah! His eyes go wide in utter shock as a giant price tag appears behind him. Stumbling back, he frantically asks where she got it, and she calmly explains His Highness told her never to take it off. A sly, knowing grin spreads across his face as he processes this information. Confused by his reaction, she asks if there's something special about the ring. A romantic silhouette shows a couple against a castle as narration explains the tradition of men engraving rings as tokens of affection. He holds up a finger, preparing to explain something important to her. She looks flustered, saying she's never heard of that tradition and thought it was something from swordsmanship school graduation. A small, awkward smile appears on her face as she trails off. Surrounded by roses, she smiles sweetly and admits that she never got to attend swordsmanship school. The brown-haired man grins mischievously, wondering if he just hit a sore spot. She looks up at him with a bright, determined smile and declares that he is her first master. He playfully grabs her head with both hands, squishing her face in amusement. He walks away, telling her not to space out and to get ready for her training. With a radiant smile, she pumps her fists and happily shouts, "Yes!" A magnificent golden carriage travels through a sunlit, grassy field. Elsewhere, the white-haired Julius grits his teeth in frustration, muttering about a public announcement. Inside the carriage, he lounges with his feet up as the pink-haired girl tells him to get it together. The carriage approaches a grand castle as she reflects on the strange circumstances bringing her to the swordsmanship school. She gazes at the castle with a serious expression, lost in thought. As Julius continues to laze about, he claims he doesn't care about the school, prompting her to ask if he had any friends there. He scoffs at the idea, questioning how he could make friends with people who aren't on his level. With a weary sigh, she begs him not to cause any trouble. Leaning against a pillar, Julius recalls her words with a bored expression. A gloved hand clenches into a tight fist as someone mentions self-defense. The pink-haired girl looks on in fury as one student is seen embedded headfirst in a wall, insisting it was self-defense. Looking up at the prestigious swordsmanship school, someone yells about how unfit another person is to be there. A brown-haired student hangs her head in shame as she is told to have some. A long-haired man looms over her, calling her pathetic and declaring that accepting female students was a waste. He grabs the student's hair, threatening her with expulsion if she doesn't stand up. The pink-haired girl steps in, coldly ordering the man to let the student go. She forcefully pries his hand away from the student's hair. She gently helps the student, asking if she's okay, and the student confirms she is. The pink-haired girl then addresses the man, saying this is the perfect opportunity and asks him to instruct the student kindly. The man scoffs, stating that the student is a good-for-nothing who failed the entrance exam. Leaning in with a sneer, he accuses the pink-haired girl of worming her way into the Royal Knights and tells the student to learn her sly tricks. Her eyes narrow with cold fury as she firmly states there is no truth to his accusations. A sword slams into the ground as the man shouts for her to have some shame. He yells passionately that chivalry is about nobility, strength, and loyalty. He continues his tirade, claiming that a wretch like her will tarnish the noble history of the knights. She calmly replies that since he isn't a knight, it's natural he doesn't know much about her, leaving him stunned. Standing confidently, she adds that those who handle their swords carelessly have no right to speak of chivalry. He furiously refutes her, screaming that no one is more suited for the role than him and that her uniform is an insult. Her gloved hand shoves his face away with disdainful force. Crash. Arya and a younger knight watch in shock as she sends an armored man flying into a stone wall. As the younger knight kneels in terror, Arya stares in disbelief at the fallen man. Completely baffled by her own strength, Arya can only mutter, "Huh?" Seated nearby, a bored-looking Julius nonchalantly comments that she made a real scene. The armored man struggles against the wall as an unseen voice questions his troublemaking, while Arya defensively insists it was self-defense. Arya argues that a swordsmanship instructor shouldn't be so easily defeated, but Julius calmly states that's precisely his point about the man's skill level. The furious instructor gets to his knees, vowing to report Arya for unjustified violence against him. Julius casually puts his arm around Arya, declaring that any insult to her is an act of treason against him. The terrified instructor stares in horror as Julius condemns him to await his punishment. The scene transitions to a peaceful courtyard where guards patrol the grounds. The young knight she defended earlier thanks Arya effusively, his eyes sparkling with admiration. Arya returns his gratitude with a warm, genuine smile. While walking with Julius, Arya privately delights in the thought that he didn't run away for once. Julius playfully raises his hand, inviting Arya to a dance as they walk through the sunlit grounds. He cheekily suggests they return to his room to deepen their love, an offer Arya immediately and firmly shuts down. Undeterred by his advances, Arya continues to bask in her happy mood, surrounded by a floral glow. Julius watches her with an understanding look as she hums a cheerful tune. His expression shifts to one of slight annoyance and confusion. Arriving at their destination, Julius is greeted by a man who is glad he could make it. Julius remarks that the place feels nostalgic, but Arya's reaction suggests otherwise. She vehemently denies any nostalgia, shouting her disagreement. A flashback reveals the same instructor from earlier, screaming at a student. He berates the young, brown-haired knight for having an incorrect stance. The instructor cruelly demeans the young knight, questioning why he's even at the school if he can't perform the basics. Thump. Back in the present, a heavy mug is slammed onto a tavern table. In casual clothes, Arya enjoys a drink while the bartender notes her good mood, to which she happily agrees. She fondly recalls the junior knight's heartfelt confession that he looks up to her and wishes to stand by her side. Flushed with joy, Arya enthusiastically orders another big round from the owner. A bell jingles as a new patron is welcomed into the tavern. Arya daydreams at the bar, fiddling with a toy horse as a cloaked figure approaches her from behind. A gloved hand lands on the table beside her as the newcomer coolly greets her. Startled, Arya turns to see who has just arrived. Her surprise quickly turns to sheer, unadulterated fury. A smiling Julius, disguised in a black hood, asks if he can join her. Flustered, Arya demands to know why he's there, while Julius calmly orders the same drink she's having. Mortified at being caught, Arya panics as Julius laughs, teasing her for letting her guard down. When he suggests she should have invited him, she bluntly tells him, "No thanks." Julius leans closer, reminding her that she owes him one, just as she starts to nod off. 2 large mugs of ale are delivered to their table with a thud. Arya cheekily asks if His Highness is a lightweight, but Julius confidently claims he can outdrink her. With a mischievous grin, Arya challenges his claim, much to his surprise. Leaning in with a competitive fire in her eyes, Arya officially challenges him to a drinking contest. Julius accepts her challenge with a cool, confident smirk. Clink! With a hearty cheers, they begin their contest. The two sit at the bar, ready to see who will emerge victorious. The other patrons watch the unlikely pair, entertained by their unfolding competition. Time passes, and Arya eventually raises her mug in triumph over a passed-out competitor. Having finally reached her limit, Arya passes out on the table, mumbling sleepily about the delicious desserts. The shocked bartender declares Julius the winner as he calmly gets up to be right back. Slam! The restroom door shuts with surprising force, revealing Julius wasn't as composed as he appeared. In a dark room, Julius collapses to the floor, panting and sweating profusely from the effort. His bright blue eye widens in a moment of sudden realization. Wiping his mouth, Julius breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that was a close call. Back in the tavern, the bartender congratulates a standing Julius as Arya lies passed out on the table. The bartender offers him a glass of water, commenting that he pushed himself hard just for a drinking contest. Julius accepts the drink with a simple word of thanks. The bartender laments that his relationship was once comfortable, but he failed to act, and now she won't believe him. Gulp. Julius quickly downs the entire glass of water. Looking at the sleeping Arya, he puts down his cup and resolutely thinks that he can't lose. His expression hardens with determination as he vows not this time. Arya sleeps peacefully on the tavern table, a contented smile on her face. Julius watches over her, a tired, yet determined look in his eyes. Gently trying to rouse her, Julius tells her it's time to go home, but she only mumbles in her sleep. A close-up shows her hand, still adorned with the simple ring from Julius. Thump! With surprising speed, Arya's hand shoots out and grabs his shirt. Startled, Julius looks down as she pulls him closer, their faces now inches apart. Surrounded by a floral glow, Arya's eyes are open as she clutches his shirt, a deep blush on her cheeks. She stares up at him, still holding on, her expression dazed and confused. Still groggy, Arya can only manage a confused, "Huh?" She asks him what's wrong, but Julius retorts that it's his line, calling her a drunkard. She suddenly loses consciousness again, slumping against his chest. Ugh. Julius struggles to keep his balance as Arya drapes herself over him, forcing the bartender to announce closing time. An exasperated Julius looks on as the completely passed-out Arya drools in her sleep. Now carrying her piggyback through the streets, Julius endures her loud, drunken cheers for "Her Highness!" As she continues shouting directly into his ear, he grits his teeth and tells her to stop talking. She rambles on about how he used to like sword fighting, prompting him to threaten to drop her. With a happy, flushed expression, Arya reveals that she met him once before she even joined the Night Order. Continuing her story, she explains that a female swordsman was rejected from the school's exams simply because there was no precedent. She recounts how the woman then challenged the examiner to a duel and utterly defeated him, as shown on a poster. As he carries her, Julius listens while a blushing Arya looks at him fondly. Whack! Laughing playfully, Arya gives him a hearty smack on the back. The blow sends him stumbling forward as she continues to laugh, thoroughly enjoying herself. Her long pink hair flows in the night breeze as a single thought crosses her mind. But she gently rests her head against his shoulder, closing her eyes and wishing her drunken ramblings were true. The scene transitions to a beautiful, starry night sky above a palace balcony. Crash! Upon arriving in a room, Julius loses his balance, and they both tumble to the ground. Scrambling to her feet, Arya looks around in a panic, wondering what just happened. She finds herself sitting on a bed, staring in confusion at Julius, who has collapsed on the floor before her. Her eyes widen in horror as she wonders if she lost the contest, while he weakly tells her to be quiet. She offers him water and suggests mouth-to-mouth, then immediately shouts that it's unnecessary. They stare at each other in the silent, tense room. A sudden realization hits Arya. Losing the drinking contest means she has to face a penalty. Leaning closer, Julius weakly brings up the penalty and asks to use her knee. As he asks to borrow her knee for a pillow, a flustered Arya quickly agrees, telling him to take as much as he wants. He complains his head is about to fall and instructs her to stretch out her leg. Blushing, Arya looks away and quietly agrees to his request. In the quiet, firelit room, Julius finally rests his head peacefully on Arya's lap. As he sleeps, a smiling chibi Arya realizes he has finally drifted off. Looking down at his sleeping form, she softly remarks that he can actually sleep after all. She gazes at his peaceful face, thinking to herself that he is never a truthful person. A hand gently reaches down toward the sleeping, blue-haired man. Gazing down, Arya's red eyes are filled with a soft, thoughtful expression. She gently brushes the hair from Julius's forehead as he sleeps with a peaceful smile. A gentle, knowing smile graces Arya's lips as she continues to watch over him. A new scene opens on a black-haired young man in assassin's gear, who proudly declares his elite status before a grand palace. Whoosh! He dashes at incredible speed through a long, ornate hallway. Slam! After bursting through a set of doors, he drops a photograph of a surprised-looking Arya, which flutters to the ground. The photograph of Arya comes to a rest on the floor, next to a purple boot. A young girl with braided, light blue hair holds up a card revealing the assassin's name, Jack Arnott. Elsewhere, a chibi-style king with a large mustache strokes his chin thoughtfully. The king stands beside Julius in a room packed with dresses, wondering what to do, while Julius comments that this is all too much. Julius suggests asking Arya's mother for help, but the king admits he has never met her. From a hiding spot, the assassin Jack glares with fury, cursing the crown prince. As the tiny king shouts angrily, Jack grumbles from his hiding spot behind a mannequin. Now concealed under a tablecloth, Jack wonders in confusion why Arya is with the prince. Flick. The blue-haired girl holds up the photo of Arya, examining it. Hiding together, the girl shows the photo to a delighted Jack. The girl reveals she knows he's a noble from another country, shocking Jack by asking what he's doing here. Flustered, Jack insists he's an elite assassin, but she reveals his true identity by showing him his own calling card. Erg! Utterly defeated, a blushing Jack stammers as the girl looks on, unimpressed. The blue-haired girl laughs and cheerfully says, "All right." With determined enthusiasm, she proposes that they create some chaos together. A montage shows various circus performers auditioning before Julius and the king. Aboard, Julius asks about the purpose of the event, and the king explains it's an audition to liven up the upcoming ceremony. Watching from afar, the blue-haired girl whispers to Jack that now is their chance to act. She shoves a nervous Jack forward, ignoring his protests that he's not ready and insisting it's now or never. Done. With a jolt of realization, Jack thinks to himself, she's right. Determined to prove himself a man of action, Jack grabs her hand and dashes forward. Whoosh! The assassin speeds past the table where Julius and his companions are seated. Now masked, Jack tosses a lit bomb toward the performance area. The king and his other companion recoil in shock, but Julius remains completely unfazed. Thud! The bomb lands harmlessly on the ground and Jack flinches as he runs away. At the table, the king looks annoyed and the other man looks concerned, while Julius maintains his bored expression. Boom! An elephant performer cleverly sprays the bomb with water, causing a harmless but large splash. Splash! The resulting wave of water soaks the royal table, drenching an annoyed Julius. Dejected that his plan failed, Jack watches as the blue-haired girl laughs, telling him he's the best. A single drop of water rolls down the cheek of the drenched but stoic Julius. Julius rises from his seat, dripping wet, as his companions stare up at him in awe. Announcing there's an intruder to be caught, Julius dashes off, while the king orders his other companion to go after him. Peeking into an office, Julius spots Arya working at her desk. Julius enters and greets her, and she returns his hello without turning around. He asks why she wasn't guarding him today. She apologizes, citing paperwork, as he mentions that someone named Yuno caused a hilarious scene. Arya asks him not to cause trouble for Aldrich, but Julius coolly replies that Yuno was the one responsible. When Julius mentions visiting her family soon, Arya visibly flinches. Noticing her reaction, he calls her name as she nervously grabs the lapel of her jacket. He gently turns her around to face him. Julius stares at her with a serious, intense expression. Seeing her reaction, Julius looks down at her in confusion, simply asking, "Huh?" As they take a step together, he looks down and asks what's wrong. Flustered, Arya asks what he means and wonders if there's something on her face. Bump! Distracted, she suddenly bumps into something unseen. Clunk! She's walked straight into a window pane, startling the crown prince beside her. Thud! He slams his hand against the glass beside her head, trapping her as she flinches. His intense blue eyes lock onto hers as he sternly demands that she tell him what's wrong now. Completely intimidated, she looks down, unable to form a reply. Crack! As if his patience has shattered, she makes a break for it, dashing down the long corridor. He stands alone by the window, watching her go and wondering what that was all about. The scene shifts to a sunlit studio where an artist with shaggy brown hair is painting. Hearing a noise, the artist turns from his canvas with a confused, "Huh? Burst!" Arya suddenly appears in the doorway, her expression one of absolute fury. Stomp, stomp, stomp! She marches angrily toward the artist, who nervously asks what's going on. Looming over him menacingly, she screams at him, asking why he isn't working right now. He internally protests, insisting that he's only going to do the bare minimum of work. Yelling that he's on duty, Arya grabs him by his shirt and begins dragging him away. Urgh! She flinches from the strain, sweating as she continues to pull him. Both panting with exhaustion, her angry resolve begins to waver as she mutters uncertainly. She suddenly stiffens as the man tells her to wait a second. Creak! With dawning horror, she remembers her escape and gasps. The window! Flap! Oh no! She cries, collapsing in despair as the man offers her a bowl of cookies to calm her down. She buries her face in her hands, completely mortified by her actions. The artist flops onto a sofa beside her, admitting he knows he shouldn't be slacking off either. His expression grows serious as he reveals he is in charge of the crown prince's safety. Overwhelmed by a sense of failure, Arya thinks to herself how pathetic she is. He offers her a reassuring smile and tells her not to get so anxious. He reminds her that she was going to wait half a year for her plan anyway. The scene shows the artist watching from a nearby doorway as the crown prince stands in the hall. Seek! The memory of the crown prince cornering her flashes in her mind, and she lets out a small eek. The crown prince's voice calls out for Luca, and the artist stands in acknowledgement. The crown prince walks past them with determined steps. Flop! To her utter shock, he sits down on the sofa right beside her. An awkward silence falls between them as he calmly reaches for a cookie. After taking a bite, he offers a cookie to her, asking if she wants one. She cautiously accepts the peace offering with a quiet word of thanks. Swish! She stares at the cookie in her hands, still looking completely bewildered. He watches her silently from the side, gauging her reaction. Pop! In a sudden, flustered move, she shoves the entire cookie into her mouth. He flinches back in surprise at her odd behavior and asks if he did something wrong. His brilliant blue eye reflects his genuine confusion and concern. With her cheeks full, she turns away, trying to say that she doesn't know. Her panicked eye glances back at him as she finishes her thought. She doesn't know anything anymore. He sits quietly, his face cast in shadow, giving her a moment. Whirl! He abruptly turns toward her, his sudden movement making her jump. She flinches, her eyes wide with surprise at his closeness. He covers his face with his hand in exasperation as she looks on, still holding her cookie. In the vast, quiet room, he thinks to himself that he'll keep waiting, so long as she doesn't run away. As she looks at his back, his silent plea hangs in the air. Just don't run away. Gathering her courage, she begins to speak with a hesitant, Turning away, Julius firmly states that he needs her reply. Whoosh! Arya leaps to her feet with a loud, yes, as a weary Julius clarifies that it was not an order. Her sparkling red eyes widen in a moment of profound realization. Surrounded by a cascade of flowers, Julius reaches out his hand and gently asks her to promise him. Arya stares back, her wide-eyed expression still filled with awe and surprise. Squeeze. She links her pinky with his, quietly agreeing to his request. Clunk. A grand procession of carriages makes its way through a serene, snow-covered forest. Tap, tap. Julius, dressed for the cold, leans out of the carriage window to get someone's attention. Clunk. He reminds Arya, who is riding alongside on horseback, that she promised to ride with him, but she insists she's only there because they're short-staffed. Clunk. Leaning further out, Julius dismisses her excuse, saying it doesn't matter. Burst. He suddenly launches himself out of the moving carriage. Hop! With surprising agility, he lands perfectly on the horse's back, right behind Arya. Nay! The horse rears up as Julius takes the reins, gleefully shouting, Giddy up! Swoosh! A startled Arya demands to know what he's doing, but as he pats the horse, he retorts that he should be asking her the same thing. Clip-clop. She warns him it's dangerous, but he confidently assures her they won't fall. He smiles, adding that they'll arrive soon anyway, leaving Arya utterly confused. Clip-clop. Their horse canters past a wooden signpost pointing toward Lillewald and Winterheart. A shocked Arya looks at him, asking what he means by his earlier statement. Clunk. The rest of the carriages are seen taking a different path at the fork in the road. Looking back with growing dread, Arya worries that this isn't the right way. Julius smiles, reassuring her they are going the right way because he intends to meet her family. Her eyes widen in absolute horror at the realization of where they're headed. He grins mischievously, telling her to accept it because she's been tricked. They arrive at a large, snow-covered estate where a group of men awaits them. Hiding her face in embarrassment, Arya can't believe they're really here, while Julius casually observes how remote the location is. As he laughs about how there's nothing around, a tiny, fuming Arya tells him to be quiet. Mortified and sweating, Arya closes her eyes in despair as a surprised Julius looks on. A beautiful woman with long pink hair stands beside a stern, white-haired man. The scene introduces her intimidating father and her warm, smiling mother. Step. A nervous, sweating Arya walks forward to greet them. Julius steps in front of her with a charming smile, formally introducing himself as Julius Otis Rosenberg, Arya's fiancé. Mother looks delighted, commenting that the rumors about him were true. With a sly smile, she compliments his handsome appearance, making Julius blush. Stab. As her mother remarks on her daughter's taste, a tiny, mortified Arya jabs Julius in the side. Julius simply smiles, seeming to enjoy the compliment and the situation. Arya's mother smiles sweetly, saying how nice this is for her daughter. Whoosh. Julius apologizes for their unannounced arrival and offers the assistance of his 4 guards. Swish. He gestures dismissively, sending his men forward. Arya's mother cheerfully directs the guards to the stable before asking Julius to sweep the hall and clean their shoes. Silence. An awkward stillness falls over the courtyard as the guards stare at Arya's parents. With a confident smile, Arya's mother looks at them expectantly and asks, "Well, yes, ma'am," one guard eagerly responds, while a bemused Julius simply says, "Ha!" Wave. Arya's mother then turns her attention to the crown prince. Point. With a pleasant smile, she asks if His Highness could help plow the field. Lean. A menacing shadow of her father holding a hoe looms behind a shocked Julius. Arya's intimidating father stands directly behind a wide-eyed and stunned Julius. Stride. Without a word, Julius and her father walk side by side into the field, both carrying farming tools. Julius glances cautiously at the silent, imposing man beside him. Lift! Her father powerfully raises a heavy hoe into the air. Wham! Crack! He brings the tool down with devastating force, shattering the frozen earth as Julius watches in disbelief. HMPH. With a smug grin, Arya's white-haired father scoffs dismissively. Julius looks at him with mild surprise, accepting the challenge with a simple, "Okay then." Lift. Mimicking her father's earlier display, Julius powerfully raises the farming tool over his head. Thwack. He brings the tool down with incredible force, shattering the frozen ground with a single mighty blow. Whoosh! Arya's father turns, his expression of shock revealing he is completely stunned by the prince's strength. Grip. The father's intense gaze is fixed on Julius as he tightens his grip on his own tool, clearly reassessing his daughter's fiancé. Clank. Inside, a worried Arya looks out the window, wondering if their field will survive the contest of wills. Rustle. Elsewhere, a woman's hands examine a fine white cloth, remarking on its high quality. Arya questions her mother, who complains about the unannounced visit, but admits the dresses are exquisite. She then embarrasses her daughter by comparing their figures, prompting Arya to shout, "Mom!" A startled Arya begs her mother to stop saying such scary things. With a knowing look, her mother remarks on how much her daughter has changed. Reaching for a dress, she tells Arya she never raised her to be obsequious, even when dealing with the imperial family. Her mother asks if she's being threatened, but a panicked Arya vehemently denies it. Blushing, Arya explains that this is all just a show to indulge the crown prince's whims. Looking unconvinced, her mother listens as Arya clarifies it's a game. If she can beat him in a competition within 6 months, the wedding is off. Her mother points out the high cost of the dresses, making a flustered chibi Arya realize they're far too expensive for a simple prank. Erg. Arya groans in frustration as her mother lets out a knowing sigh beside her. Placing her hands on Arya's shoulders, her mother begins to offer some advice, saying, "Even if it's just a game." She looks down at her daughter, her expression turning serious and thoughtful. As her mother speaks of someone who made a fool of her at a bar, a vision of Arya surrounded by flowers fills the screen. Arya's expression softens as she listens intently. A vague memory surfaces of a drunken, giggling Arya bonking Julius on the head with a mug, causing her to pause in the present. Arg, with a sudden flinch, Arya recoils in horror, finally realizing the embarrassing truth of that night. She panics, insisting the prince did nothing wrong before clutching her head, and admitting that while he's annoying, the fault was hers. Ugh. Overwhelmed by shame, Arya cries into her hands, surrounded by a cascade of flowers. Her mother observes her with a quiet, pensive expression. Her mother teasingly asks if Arya has fallen for him, prompting a loud, "No!" as a mortified Arya scurries away in denial. With a wink, her mother wonders why she wasn't told sooner, admitting she was rude on purpose and is now unsure how to act. Arya insists that's not it, firmly stating she hasn't fallen for anyone. Chuckle. Her mother covers her mouth, trying to hide a knowing smile. In a cute chibi form, her mother claims they overthink things and proposes a hypothetical scenario about awful-tasting alcohol. A confused chibi Arya is surrounded by question marks and various alcoholic drinks. Her mother explains that if thinking of a certain person makes awful alcohol taste wonderful, it's proof of love. Arya stares back, her wide-eyed expression a picture of pure confusion. Step. Her mother turns and walks toward the beautiful dresses, leaving Arya to ponder her words. Stroking the fine fabric of a gown, her mother muses that she should make her choice carefully. Lift. As Arya watches, her mother lifts a dress from its stand, a warm, gentle smile on her face. She happily remarks that choosing is going to be difficult. Arya watches her mother, a serious and thoughtful look in her eyes. Stride. Walking down the hall with an armful of clothes, Arya thinks to herself that building muscle is hard work. Click. Opening the door, Arya calls out for her dad but stops short at the sight of Julius's dripping wet hair. Her eyes widen in shock as she takes in the sight of a shirtless, muscular Julius toweling his hair. Splash. Water drips from his body, pooling around his bare feet on the floor. The scene cuts between Julius's chiseled torso and Arya's utterly stunned, wide-eyed face. Drip. Julius turns to the frozen, chibi-fied Arya and casually asks for the towel. A blushing Arya lets out a silent, horrified scream. Ack. Wham! In a flustered panic, she throws the towel directly at his face, causing him to grunt in surprise. Dash. She immediately turns and flees the room at top speed. Grab? Now sitting in a bath, a mischievous Julius grins and calls out after her. Rustle. Julius turns back with a smirk, revealing he's now wearing a full maid's uniform. Stomp. A mortified Arya charges forward in her red uniform, shouting, Mom! Amused, her mother covers her mouth to hide a laugh and asks if her daughter still walks like that. Squeal. A flustered chibi Arya explains the crown prince was in the bathroom, and her mother realizes that's what her husband meant. Arya desperately tries to continue her explanation, her face a mask of panic. Stare. A confused Arya looks on as her mother continues to chuckle, while the guards watch from the stairs. Turning away, Arya insists they're dealing with the crown prince and tells her mother to stop with the misunderstandings. Twirl. Posing dramatically amidst a cascade of flowers, Julius playfully complains that she's being mean for exposing him so vulnerably. Sob. Julius continues his theatrical performance, pretending to cry on the grand staircase as everyone watches. Arya's mother simply says, goodness, while Arya looks on in wide-eyed shock. With a wink, Arya's mother clarifies that she meant to give him different clothes. Flutter. Posing flirtatiously, Julius muses that it's scary how good he looks in everything, causing a tiny Arya to shriek in protest. Her mother reacts with a delighted, oh my, as a small brown-haired maid peeks out from behind her. Squabble. Arya and Julius playfully wrestle on the stairs as her mother, another maid, and the guards watch with bemusement. Spin. Arya's mother turns away with a content, knowing smile. Done, done. A magnificent, sparkling feast is revealed, covering a long dining table. Whoa. Julius's guards stare in amazement at the lavish spread of food. Tada Arya's mother and a chef proudly present the feast to the delighted men. One of the guards insists they shouldn't be eating at the same table or be served by them. Wow. Laughing, Arya's mother tells them not to worry, fondly recalling a time when the estate was filled with apprentices. Growl. As the guards' stomachs rumble, she kindly tells them they must be hungry and to eat up. Now changed into formal attire, Julius sits silently at the head of the table. At dinner, Arya asks a quiet Julius what's wrong, but he simply replies, nothing. Ha! He closes his eyes with a small, satisfied smile. A confused Arya watches him, wondering what he's thinking. Chuckle. Julius leans in to whisper something to Arya, who looks back and asks what he means. Tremble holding his knife and fork, Arya's father begins to shake with emotion as his daughter calls out his name in alarm. Her mother reassures them that he's just emotional about losing his daughter, and he nods in agreement. Turning the tables, her mother asks how the two of them became so close, causing both Julius and Arya to tremble nervously. A flashback begins as a smiling Arya remembers how they first met. Julius smiles fondly, lost in the same memory. A cascade of roses signifies a transition to 7 years ago. A younger Arya is shown with shorter hair, standing proudly in a white knight's uniform. A close-up highlights her determined, fiery red eye. From behind, a younger Julius watches as Arya stands alone before a group of imposing, shadowed figures. An ornate crest introduces the royal knighthood as an elite group. The scene shifts to the imposing Academy of Sword Arts, which only accepts students from prestigious families. The story explains that only those with exceptionally high scores are chosen to join the knighthood. A caption introduces the new recruit, a smiling 18-year-old Arya von Winterhart. Groan. The flashback shows Arya in a moment of extreme distress. Stab. A chibi Arya is tormented by her insecurities about being a commoner and the first female recruit, clutching her knotted stomach. Lift. Stealing her resolve, she decides she must work harder than everyone else to be accepted. A cheerful blonde-haired officer startles her by calling out her name. Whirl. Arya quickly salutes him, and he laughs, telling her there's no need to be so nervous. He reassures her that she'll be fine, leaving her to wonder about his rank. Grab. The officer hands her a stack of documents, assigning her to take them to the office for further instructions. Turn. Arya looks back at him as she holds the papers. Whoosh! She watches as he walks toward a line of saluting soldiers, welcoming them. Flip. A month has passed, and an exhausted Arya laments that she's stuck with paperwork again. Peeking around a corner, she angrily questions why the crown prince is absent yet again. Lean, a pink-haired woman, peers down from a balcony as a brown-haired knight asks his blonde superior, what else is new? Annoyed, the brown-haired knight points out that the woman watching them is the problem, adding, it's no wonder his subordinates complain. The pink-haired woman's expression darkens as she overhears the knight rant about the future emperor breaking rules, and she tells herself to stay calm. A close-up reveals the burning intensity in her determined eye. In her thoughts, a white-haired man stands amidst swirling rumors that he is overbearing, self-centered, and cold. Step. The pink-haired woman walks with a stack of books, thinking she doesn't want to be like someone so talented, yet so flawed. Step. She looks up with newfound resolve, a determined smile on her face. A vision of a gleaming sword appears as a hand diligently fills out paperwork. She works tirelessly through the night, believing that if she just continues with her given tasks, one day they will finally accept her as she fills countless pages with writing. Back in the present, someone calls out to the blonde captain, who looks weary and stressed. The pink-haired woman approaches the captain with a stack of documents, announcing that she has finished all her work. Just as she asks to start training, the captain pats her head, praising our Arya for being such a meticulous and fast worker. The captain tries to assign more work to Arya, but she hesitates, saying she can't do that. In a hazy memory, a menacing hand reaches for her as a voice offers a dubious opportunity, causing tears to well in her eyes. A sinister and determined smile spreads across Arya's face. As the two knights walk away laughing, her vision begins to glitch and distort. Turn! She spins around abruptly as the world continues to fragment around her. Bump. She collides with someone, her face a mask of shock and irritation. She looks up to find the impassive, white-haired man, Julius, looking down at her. Her back is to the viewer as she stands before the imposing figure. Loom. He towers over her, his presence filling the grand hallway. She quickly bows her head, apologizing and addressing him as Your Highness. His piercing blue eyes watch her as he gently touches a strand of her pink hair. Stunned by his touch, she brings a hand to her head and wonders aloud, a knight? She stares up at him in wide-eyed disbelief. Her expression shifts to one of pure devotion as she clutches his cape, declaring it an honor to serve him in any task. A close-up captures the sharp, calculating gaze of Julius's blue eye. Stride. He turns and walks away, coldly stating that she has become boring. Left in his wake, she watches him go, quietly questioning his harsh word, boring? Crumple. Her hand tightens around the documents she's holding, crushing the paper. Livid. She thinks to herself in disbelief, I'm boring. Stride. She storms away, fuming that he knows nothing about her or her feelings. With determined strides, she marches down the hall. Slam! She slams a book down on a desk. ready to work. Clench. With her head in her hands, she grits her teeth in frustration. Whoosh! She triumphantly finishes a towering stack of paperwork, leaving her colleague in the dust as she declares she's done. Bang! The flustered colleague makes a hasty exit, leaving Arya alone with her mountain of completed work. Swish! In a field of daisies, Arya trains relentlessly with her sword. From a high window, Julius observes her training as his aide remarks on how early it is. Flinch. The blonde captain looks startled as he's told she has been practicing there every evening for months. Swish. As she practices, Arya turns and asks if His Highness is in need of a secretary. Surrounded by flowers, Julius clarifies his offer. He wants her as a knight, under his direct control. Arya is left completely speechless by his unexpected proposition. Julius leans on his hand, looking slightly perplexed by her silence as he asks, "What?" Standing before him in the garden, Arya boldly questions his fitness to be her monarch given his attitude. Wave! The blonde captain rushes in to intervene, but Julius calmly waves him away, telling Arya to continue. She presses on, warning him that with his high-handedness, his subordinates will wither. Loom. Julius leans closer, challenging her accusation, but she coolly points out that he's proving her point right now. He falls silent, a thoughtful, almost amused expression on his face as he considers her words. Looking surprised, the young Arya is told by the blonde-haired officer that she should try smiling more. The young Julius listens intently, his gloved hand covering his mouth in thought. With a slight smile, Julius agrees, as a shocked officer looks on from behind him. The officer tells Julius he'll consider his request, while a chibi Arya asks that he stick to working hours. Back in the present, a pensive Arya stands in a hallway, feeling a strange warmth and admitting she can't figure it out. Click. She opens her bedroom door, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight within. A sparkling, overjoyed Julius sits on her floor, cheekily inviting her to come in. Slide. Annoyed, Arya tells him she didn't mean for him to smile like that as he poses cutely on her bed. A flustered Arya begs him to stop dropping by her room unannounced. Done. Her panic intensifies as she sees him flipping through a photo album filled with her baby pictures. Snatch? She lunges for the book, shouting for him not to look as he watches in amusement. A doe-eyed 5-year-old Arya is shown in a photo as Julius calls it cute, but she insists it's just embarrassing. Lean. He leans toward her, softly remarking on how cute she was. Gently touching her cheek, he notes that she's still warm from her bath. As Arya calls him Your Highness, he looks at her with a gentle, knowing smile and asks, "Huh?" Taking her hand amidst a cascade of flowers, he sincerely thanks her for choosing him. A close-up reveals the intense, sparkling depth of his blue eye. Creak. His hand gently covers hers on the photo album. Grab. He pulls her close and blindfolds her with his hand, asking if she's trying to seduce him. Lower. A close-up shows Julius's eye, his gaze intense as he leans in. Clasp. He holds her firmly as a flustered Arya begins to speak, her words trailing off. Slip. She loses her balance and falls backward onto the bed. Blush. Julius leans into her neck, causing a blushing Arya to let out a surprised gasp. Holding her face gently, he asks why she isn't pushing him away. Clench. With her eyes squeezed shut, she blushes deeply as he smiles, moving closer. He pauses just shy of a kiss, a soft smile on his lips as she keeps her eyes closed. Glance. She opens her eyes slightly, looking at him with uncertainty. Rush. He closes the final gap, kissing her passionately. Rustle, creak. The sound of rustling fabric and the creaking bed fill the air as they kiss. As he deepens the kiss, she breathes out his title, Your Highness? Creak. He gently lays her down, and she lets out a soft cry as their kiss continues. Pant. Pulling back slightly, he licks his lips as they both catch their breath. Panting, he whispers close to her ear, asking if it doesn't feel good. Lean. He rests his head against her shoulder, nuzzling her neck. A flustered and dazed Arya looks over at him, her face flushed. Blush. He whispers a question into her ear, asking if she really thought he would force himself on her. Creak. Leaning over her, he promises he won't go any further. Peck. He gives her a soft kiss on the forehead, adding, "Unless you tell me to." The scene shifts to the bright, sunlit exterior of the Winterheart family home. Woohoo! Two of Julius's guards celebrate enthusiastically, shouting that they're finally going back. Groan. One guard complains about the exhausting work, but compliments the food, while another excitedly shows off their newly mended cloaks. In the snowy courtyard, the guards cheer for Arya's kindness as Julius and her father stand facing each other in silence. Julius watches Arya's father, sensing he has something important he wants to say. Peek. A happy Arya peeks out from behind her father's arm. Her father formally addresses Julius, who looks back with a neutral expression. Bow. Curtsy. Arya's father bows deeply, and Arya curtsies as he apologizes for any offense caused during their stay. Julius smiles warmly, assuring him that it was an enjoyable experience. As Arya curtsies, her father tells Julius that she is very precious to them and asks him to please take care of her. A close-up reveals Arya's mother watching with a gentle, satisfied smile. Julius looks at them with a serious and sincere expression, kindly telling them to rise. With a shocked Arya looking on, Julius kneels before her and insists that he should be the one on his knees. Glance. Julius looks up with a serious and unwavering gaze. As they prepare to depart, Arya looks on with a troubled expression. Chatter. Amidst the bustle of the departing guards, Arya walks toward the carriage. Julius watches the scene with a soft, knowing smile. He reflects that without them, he would have been utterly alone. Julius then turns to formally address Baron and Baroness Winterheart. He respectfully asks for their permission to stay with Arya. Loom. An intimidating aura emanates from Arya's father as her mother looks on in surprise. Her mother, however, smiles brightly and readily agrees, much to her husband's shock. Shake. Shake. While her husband trembles in silent protest, she announces that he also agrees. Reach. She then reaches for Julius's hand, delivering a stern warning should any harm come to her daughter. Ah! As Arya's mother yanks Julius's hair in the background, a confused subordinate asks Arya what's happening. Arya explains it's a traditional promise-making ritual from her mother's hometown, as they link pinkies. The blue-haired subordinate expresses his surprise, having never seen it before, leaving Arya puzzled. Back in a study, Julius wonders to himself how someone knew a certain piece of information. Arya looks on with a worried and pensive expression. A small, blushing Arya is lost in her thoughts. The scene shifts to a magnificent, sun-drenched royal palace. A small chibi king explains that while Julius now has a fiancé, both of them are currently away. Swish! A blonde woman holding a fan simply responds, "Oh, I see." With a confident smile, the mysterious woman declares that she will wait. Clip. Whoa! Arriving back at the capital, they are greeted by the sight of a stunning castle in the snow. Clip. Lop! Julius proudly presents a magnificent horse, commenting on its splendor as a stern Arya holds the reins. Visibly annoyed, Arya blankly asks if he can please just ride in the carriage like a normal person. Lop. Lop. She addresses him as Your Highness, and he turns to her, asking what she wants. Turning away, Arya requests to be left alone for the night. Julius's eyes widen in genuine surprise at her request. Hehe. Leaning over a scowling Arya, he cheekily grins and agrees. Eek. Wham. Just as she turns to leave, Julius suddenly yanks her back by her cloak, causing her to cry out in protest. Urgh! Now both sporting bandages, Julius and Arya glare at each other in mutual annoyance. Step. Their standoff is interrupted as the blonde-haired officer approaches, calling out to the prince. Turn. He urgently summons Julius to an audience with the king regarding a guest from the Hortani Empire. which surprises Arya. Clap. Julius readily agrees with the clap of his hands. Push. Push. He playfully pushes Arya along, telling her she's off duty while she protests that the guest is more important. Stroke. He gently strokes her hair, calming her down. Smiling warmly, he asks her to think only of him that night. A flustered chibi Arya looks around the palace hall, clearly bewildered by his words. A map reveals the continent is divided between the wealthy Hortani Empire and the powerful Rosenberg Empire. The unexpected visitor is introduced, Princess Ares Vivian Hortani. Julius coolly remarks that it's quite rude for a princess to arrive unannounced. The princess smiles, blaming the intrusion on her stubborn father. Julius gives her a skeptical look, questioning her excuse. Clack! Setting her teacup down, the princess tells him to wait just a moment. She reveals her father's attendant is just outside the door, ready to report if Julius leaves. Julius counters that forcing the issue will only lead to more intrusions and a cumbersome formal request. Smiling slyly, the princess suggests it would be simpler for him to just join her for tea. Julius studies her face, concluding that she doesn't appear to be lying. He leans back with a stressed expression, covering his mouth with his hand. Sigh. Later, his blue-haired subordinate finds him exhausted in a chair, noting that he must be tired. Reflecting on Princess Ares's visit, Julius notes that she didn't take long to leave. Clunk. Inside her carriage, Princess Ares disdainfully remarks that her kind can be quite a nuisance. Holding a fan to her lips, she adds that his obsession knows no bounds. She recalls testing Julius, admitting she never expected him to look so taken aback. A dark, turbulent energy marks a transition in the scene. Stand! Julius orders his blue-haired subordinate Aldrich to investigate Princess Ares, certain she was looking for someone. Clunk. Swish. Back in her carriage, Princess Ares smiles slyly, admitting that this just makes her more intrigued. A close-up reveals her confident, knowing smile. In a tavern, a grumpy pink-haired woman with her arms crossed thinks about a night. Gulp. She defiantly chugs the entire drink in one go. Flap. She collapses onto the counter, telling a worried bartender that it doesn't taste good. Lying on the bar, her determined eyes reveal a hidden resolve. A brief memory shows her happily sharing a drink with a smiling, white-haired man. Bolt! Back in the present, she jerks upright, a deep blush spreading across her face. Gulp! In a flashback, she chugs the drink again. The concerned bartender looks at her from across the bar and asks if she is all right. She covers her face with her hands, overcome with embarrassment. Jingle, jingle. Standing outside, she impatiently waits with her arms crossed. Spotting an ornate carriage with two nobles, she senses that this is a problem. Dash. 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 She rushes over to Princess Ares, asking if something is the matter. Turn. The beautiful, blonde-haired princess turns to face her. Smirk. A close-up shows the princess's lips curving into a subtle smirk. The pink-haired woman is momentarily stunned, thinking to herself how beautiful the princess is. Glance. Her eye widens as she takes in the scene. Recognizing the crest of the Hortony Empire on the carriage, she realizes who she must be. Princess Ares looks her over and pointedly asks if she is a knight. Salute. The pink-haired woman proudly confirms she is, prompting the princess to ask if she could borrow a Rosenberg carriage. The knight looks confused by the unexpected request. Squelch. As the carriage wheel sits stuck in the mud, the princess clarifies she needs a carriage or a place to stay. The pink-haired knight clenches her fist with determination. Step. She confidently steps forward, asking the princess to please wait for a moment. Splash. She steps into the muddy puddle as the princess watches, amused. Lift. With a grunt, the knight single-handedly lifts the heavy carriage wheel out of the mud. Creak. She smiles at the driver and asks him to check if the wheel moves, to which he readily agrees. Splash. The wheel settles back onto the pavement, and she realizes her hand is now scraped. Lift. Brushing her forehead, she politely says, "Excuse me." Hiding behind her fan, Princess Aries condescendingly asks why she doesn't leave the heavy lifting to men. Drip. Drip. As water drips from her boots, the knight firmly states that she is a knight too. The knight smiles, stating the princess is not her sovereign, and the princess agrees. Princess Aries suggests the knight didn't perform the feat merely to boast her skills. A flashback shows a young man resolving to become the best version of himself. The knight explains she strives to be her best for those who think highly of her, despite her shortcomings. Swish. The princess calls her admirable, though the knight thinks she is just trying to appease herself. Princess Aries continues, remarking on how sincere and admirable the knight is. Clack. 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 The princess steps closer, warning that if she comes any nearer, her dress might get dirty. Lift! She suddenly lifts the knight's chin, forcing her to meet her gaze. Through a shattered reflection, the princess menacingly states that the knight will be worth destroying. Held in place, the shocked knight can only stammer as she stares into the princess's eyes. Turn! Releasing her, Princess Aries smiles warmly and wishes her goodbye, saying she'll root for her. Clack! The princess walks away, leaving the stunned knight to process their bizarre encounter. A mysterious, brown-haired man walks past Princess Aries, telling her that she is very different from her. Clunk! 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 Watching the princess's carriage depart, the pink-haired knight reflects on what a strange woman she is. Blush. She then blushes, realizing with a smile that it's the first time a noble has ever rooted for her. Her thoughts shift to a more important matter as the scene transitions to a magnificent estate under a starry sky. HMPH. She recalls a frustrating memory where the white-haired man kissed her forehead, refusing to go further, leaving her to wonder what game he was playing. Arr! In her mind, two versions of him gleefully taunt her, asking if she likes him now, causing her to scream internally from embarrassment. Rush. Still flustered, she trails behind the blue-haired subordinate Aldrich as he hurries down a hallway carrying a stack of documents. In a flustered and rushed study, the white-haired man intently reads through a document while surrounded by his men. Burst. The pink-haired knight bursts into the room, demanding to know what's going on with His Highness. Glance. The white-haired man slowly looks up, his piercing blue eyes meeting hers. He calmly tells the drunkard she should go to bed, but she quickly retorts that she isn't drunk. Squeeze. Playfully squeezing her cheek, he dismisses her protest, much to her annoyance. His teasing stops as he suddenly notices the scrape on her hand, his expression turning serious. He pulls her closer and sternly demands that she answer him, startling her with his sudden change in tone. Squeeze. As he grips her wrist, she flinches and tries to dismiss the injury as a common battlefield scratch. Her mind flashes back to his harsh words from the past. I have no use for the weak ones. Seeing her pained expression, he quickly clarifies that's not what he meant this time. Frown. His face etched with concern, he insists she tell him how she got hurt. She quietly admits that she helped a carriage that was in trouble. He studies her for a moment before asking if that's truly all that happened. Mutter. Looking down with a gentle expression, he quietly mutters that it's a relief. Turn. He tells her she should retire for the night, and she reluctantly agrees, turning to leave. Creak. The door closes behind her, leaving him to quietly review his documents. Slam. On the other side of the door, the pink-haired knight stands with a look of grim determination. With a sad, weary smile, she thinks to herself that she feels like a fool. She remembers that the crown prince was the only person who ever truly recognized her as a knight. Squeeze! Zap! She clenches her fists with renewed purpose and walks down the hallway. Tremble. Her hands shake as she considers the implications of his concern for her. Zap! Step! Zap! She walks alone through a quiet, moonlit colonnade. She stops dead in her tracks, having overheard two men discussing a serious matter concerning Lilywald. She realizes Lilywald is near Winterheart and begins to worry that something has happened there. Her eyes widen in horror as the name Winterheart sinks in. Whoosh! She dashes back toward the two men, yelling for the captain to wait. She confronts the startled men, demanding to know what they were talking about. Glance. The two men look at each other, clearly hesitant to speak. Panicked, she yells at them again, asking if something happened in Winterheart. Flinch. One of the men confirms her fears. Baron and Baroness Winterheart have been arrested by the neighboring country. She listens in stunned silence, as he reveals they've been charged with conspiracy and repeated acts of theft. Back in the study, the Crown Prince orders his men to find all trade records with Lilywald, specifically those over a year old. Glint. A determined and dangerous glint shines in his eyes. Mutter. He notes that over 10 cases of theft have been reported by merchants on that trade route this year alone. Mutter. Pointing to a map, he explains that Winterheart's location at the crossroads makes them natural suspects. The blue-haired subordinate, Aldrich, looks on with a deeply worried expression. Rushed and flustered, the men scramble for documents as Aldrich curses the situation. Mumble. Both the Crown Prince and Aldrich mutter in frustration, overwhelmed by the sudden crisis. Gulp. A close-up on Aldrich's eye reveals his deep anxiety. Whoosh! Aldrich stands abruptly, declaring they must inform the captain at once, but the Crown Prince stops him. Tremble. The Crown Prince reminds Aldrich of his explicit order to keep this from Arya, and Aldrich nervously agrees. Tremble. Grabbing his subordinate's hair, the Crown Prince menacingly reminds him what he just told a knight to do. Slam. The Crown Prince slams his fist down on a scroll, his anger finally boiling over. Julius worries about what will happen if Arya acts alone and finds herself in trouble. A map highlights the tense political situation as a blonde woman warns that sending troops into the neutral country of Lilywald could provoke Courtney and lead to a major war. Clench. Overwhelmed with frustration, Julius covers his face and slams his fist on the desk. A blue-haired knight worries about what will happen if Arya gets hurt. As his knights discuss the situation, Julius commands, "Quiet. Rise." Julius stands and apologizes to the blue-haired knight for his outburst. Glance. Regaining his composure, he states that they need sufficient evidence before they can move their troops. Addressing his knights, he declares that until they can find the evidence. His expression turns fierce as he commands that no one sleeps. His knights shout in unison, "Yes, Your Highness." Rustle. The scene shifts to Arya adjusting the sleeve of her uniform. Step. As she walks down the hall, a fellow knight greets her as captain, and she returns the good morning. Knock, knock. She arrives at a door and announces her presence. Lean. Entering the room, she finds Julius slumped over his desk, exhausted from working all night. As Julius reaches for a map, Arya stands before him, while in the foreground, two other knights are fast asleep at their own desk. Snore. Looking at the weary Julius, Arya announces that she'd like to hand something in. He looks up, his eyes tired but sharp, as she reveals it's her letter of resignation. Leaning over the cluttered desk, Julius asks in disbelief, "Letter of resignation?" Arya begins to explain, stating that she has always lived with pride in being a knight. She continues, saying that it is he and the guards of the knighthood that have allowed her to become a knight, expressing a gratitude so deep she can't put it into words, as her comrades sleep nearby. With Julius listening intently, she explains that, as a woman, she would not have been allowed to even dream of becoming a knight otherwise. A gentle smile touches her lips as she recalls that no matter how difficult things became, she persevered because her parents always supported her, shown in a happy memory, firm. Her expression hardens as she declares that if being a knight is preventing her from saving her parents. But Julius cuts her off, his eyes wide with shock and refusal. Turn! He turns to her, angrily reminding her that she is his fiancée. Clink! Unfazed, she continues her explanation as she begins to draw her sword. She formally presents her sword, her decision made clear in her determined gaze. Clack! She places her sword on a rack, symbolizing her resignation. He calls her name Arya, as she turns and walks into the training yard. Snatch! She grabs a wooden training sword, warning him not to let things get out of hand. Step! Julius follows her onto the training grounds and proposes a duel. Whoever drops their sword first loses. Lift! All right, she agrees, raising her sword in challenge. Clack! Clunk! Their wooden swords collide with explosive force. Whoosh! As they trade blows, Julius remarks that he recognizes Luca's style in her swordsmanship. She confirms that Luca is indeed her teacher. With a look of disdain, Julius simply states, "I don't like it." Confused by his sudden change in demeanor, Arya asks what he doesn't like. Dash! He suddenly lunges at her, declaring he doesn't like any of it. Clack! She blocks his furious strike, letting out a frustrated erg. Whoosh! Their duel intensifies as he confronts her, saying she's been acting strange since yesterday. Appalled, she demands to know if he's telling her to drop her sword. He shouts back, denying her accusation completely. She presses him, asking what he means, but he hesitates, only managing to say, "I just..." He silently curses, his brilliant blue eye filled with raw frustration. Clack! Clunk! Their swords lock as they push against each other with all their might. Skreek! He grits his teeth, realizing that if he keeps pushing her like this. Clack! Arya meets his gaze, her own eyes burning with unwavering resolve. Stagger! He suddenly stumbles backward in shock as she overpowers him, leaving her equally surprised by the outcome. The white-haired man looks down with a serious and contemplative expression. In a snowy training yard, he assumes a fighting stance, as the pink-haired Arya watches in surprise, holding a wooden practice sword. He laughs, telling her she's grown stronger, while she returns his gaze with a look of steely determination. He formally asks to be excused as she turns and walks away from the training ground. Flap! As she walks away, birds take flight from a nearby evergreen tree. Burst! The blue-haired Aldrich rushes into a room, urgently calling for His Highness and announcing the captain's arrival. Lean! Lounging on a sofa, the white-haired man covers his eyes with a piece of paper and tells him he's too loud. Sighing, he looks at a note and wonders why she can't just be honest and ask for help, recalling an image of her crying as a child. Aldrich earnestly asks why he can't simply tell her that he'll protect her. Questioned by Aldrich, the white-haired man changes the subject, asking if he knows the whereabouts of Sir Luca. Sigh. He waves off the question, remarking that Luca has a tendency to disappear during important moments. A close-up reveals his piercing blue eye, reflecting his deep and silent contemplation. From a sunlit window, he looks out over a verdant landscape, lost in thought. Rattle! Sitting outside, the pink-haired woman is startled by a sudden noise. Grip! In a tender memory, one hand gently takes hold of another. A narration explains that a ring given by a knight holds a final message, as a silhouette of a woman mourns at his tomb. Looking at the ring on her own finger, she thinks to herself that she doesn't deserve it anymore. Slide with a determined look, she pulls the ring from her finger. A single tear wells up in her eye as she holds back her emotions. Closing her eye, she lets out a small, sorrowful laugh. Holding the ring, she recalls a voice telling her she can't escape. Rattle! Surrounded by golden flowers, she smiles confidently to herself, thinking she's already made her escape. The scene shifts to the towering stone walls of the kingdom of Lilywald. A nervous king asks a hooded figure if their deal will erase the kingdom's debts, and is told it will when the job is done. Whoosh! The king of Lilywald angrily points and demands that they be killed immediately. He reveals his disdain for Winterheart, planning to frame their deaths as a suicide out of guilt. The hooded figure coolly informs the king that this is not what his master wants. Erg! The king panics, grabbing his crown and worrying that Rosenberg will find out. Dash! A guard rushes in to announce a visitor, causing the king to bolt upright in fear. Whoosh! The pink-haired woman stands defiantly before the castle gates, drawing her sword. Stepping past defeated guards, she coldly tells the others to move. Dash! She fearlessly charges toward a line of armored soldiers blocking her path. Whoosh! She swings her sword in a wide, powerful arc. Whoosh! She skillfully parries an attack while dodging another, her movements fluid and precise. She effortlessly cuts through the guard's defenses, continuing her run toward the castle. Watching from a tree, a brown-haired man observes her reckless charge and wonders if it's a genetic trait. He smirks with amusement, concluding that she seems to be handling herself just fine. Whoosh! He effortlessly catches an arrow fired at him, muttering a casual hup. As a guard spots him and shouts about another intruder, he calmly flicks the arrow back. Wham! He incapacitates the guard with a swift strike to the helmet. Flop! Landing lightly on the fallen guard, he decides it's about time to make his move. Whoosh! He confidently declares his intention to rescue the Baron and Baroness. Dash! The pink-haired woman sprints through a brightly lit castle hallway. Whoosh! Her eyes widen in shock as she abruptly raises her sword to defend against an unseen foe. Clang! Her blade clashes violently against the twin swords of the mysterious hooded figure. She stares in utter disbelief, shocked that someone could block her attack. Screech! The hooded figure pushes back, surprised to encounter a knight of her skill in Lilywald. Screech! As their blades scrape, the figure menacingly asks why she came. Swish! She deftly leaps backward, creating distance for their duel. Crouching into a ready stance, she demands to know what her opponent means. Lift. A hooded figure in a black mask explains that knights are their master's possessions. Dash. The hooded figure continues, saying that if knights betray their masters, they lose their sense of worth, as the pink-haired woman charges at them. Clawing their swords clash violently, and she internally notes the heaviness of the blow. CRRRRK. Gritting her teeth, she resolves that she cannot let him beat her, thinking of her knighthood. Clang. She shoves him back, declaring that knighthood is a way of life. Grip. In a determined flashback, she remembers gripping a handle, thinking she could not abandon her parents for her own safety. With fierce conviction, she shouts that she could never live with such a choice. Clang. The hooded figure effortlessly parries another one of her strikes. Crack. The force of the block shatters the figure's mask, revealing a familiar green eye and leaving her speechless with shock. Wham! Taking advantage of the surprise, she lands a powerful kick, causing her opponent to cry out. Dash. The masked figure tumbles backward from the force of her attack. The now unmasked figure clutches his chest and grimly states that since she has seen his face, he must now kill her. The dark-haired, half-masked man looms over her, raising his sword for a final strike. A close-up on her eye reflects her quiet acceptance of defeat. As she awaits the blow, she thinks of him as a huge presence in her life, remembering them standing together. A tender memory flashes of a gloved hand taking hers. In her memory, the blue-haired man from the past speaks with a gentle expression. Her eye widens as the blade descends toward her. A spray of blood signifies a fatal blow as she thinks to herself, I'm done for. Blood spatters across her eye as she stares in shock. To her surprise, the blood is not hers. It's gushing from a deep cut on the masked man's shoulder. Whirl! He spins around in shock, and she looks on, equally stunned by the sudden turn of events. A new figure walks determinedly down the long, sunlit hall. The masked man watches the approaching figure with a nervous, wide-eyed expression. The pink-haired woman also turns to see who has arrived, her eyes wide with disbelief. The white-haired crown prince appears, his great sword drawn and ready. Clang! He intercepts the masked man's attack, his blade blocking the path to the pink-haired woman. Crack! The masked man's mask shatters further as he realizes how powerful his new opponent is. Clang! The crown prince holds his ground, creating a tense standoff between the three combatants. Whoosh! The masked man slides back, barely withstanding the force of the crown prince's blow. Whoosh! Panting, he realizes that a moment's hesitation would have cost him his arm. His determined green eye glares from behind the broken mask as he catches his breath. The crown prince sizes up his foe, acknowledging that he's on another level. He gives an order to surround the masked man, calling out for backup. Whoosh! Armored guards quickly move to encircle the intruders in the hall. The Crown Prince's sword begins to glow with an intense blue aura as he warns everyone not to get in his way. A wave of brilliant blue power erupts from his sword and body. Loom. The energy explodes outward in a massive, devastating wave. Gah! The masked man cries out as he is thrown back by the overwhelming force. Staring in awe with blood on her cheek, she recognizes the incredible power of his sacred sword. She recalls how he used that very power to make Rosenberg the most powerful empire on the continent. The brilliant blue energy swirls, filling the entire hall with its light. Stagger. In another room, the panicked king is urged to escape as the brown-haired man appears and calls out to him. Please. The man grabs the king, holding a blade to him and asking where he's been while the king begs for protection. Thud, the man's mask falls to the floor as he recalls the order he was given. The terrified king begins to scream, blaming the man for everything. Erg. The man looks down impassively as the king insists he's done nothing wrong. As darkness swirls, the king continues his tirade, claiming that he was tricked by others. The man coldly thinks that the king's own greed is what led to his crippling debt. Cornered, the king desperately agrees and shifts the blame, demanding the man take responsibility for the consequences. The king of Lilywald laughs nervously, certain the Hortony Empire can handle Rosenberg and eagerly asking what he can do to help. Whoosh! The brown-haired man draws his blood-splattered sword in a swift, silent motion. As the king looks on in terror, a narration reveals that the next king of Lilywald has already been decided. Whoosh! The man presents a scroll, announcing that he is here to relay his master's message. A blonde woman in a veiled hat smiles with cruel amusement. Lounging on a throne, she declares that certain people are of no interest to her. Blood erupts into the air as the king cries out in his final moments. Gah! Flop! The king's body hits the floor as his crown rolls away, his guards watching the cloaked figure who struck him down. With blood on his cheek, the brown-haired man resolves to kill Baron Winterheart before the crown prince can reach him. In a determined flashback, the pink-haired woman shouts that she could never live with the choice of abandoning her parents for safety. Grab! A narration explains that Lilywald will face collapse with its king gone. The plan is revealed. The royal bloodline will rebuild with the financial backing of the Hortony Empire. Drag. The brown-haired man coldly drags the king's body away. Loom. The crown prince's immense blue power finally subsides as he stands before the pink-haired woman. Clink. She gently touches his armored arm, calling out to his highness. Scratch. He turns away, running a hand through his hair as she demands to know why he came. Flop. Turning back to her with a serious expression, he gives a single chilling answer. War. He kneels down to meet her gaze, casually stating, "Well, here I am." He remains silent, watching her intently as she processes his arrival. She questions his statement, noticing he's sweating and concluding that he's truly angry. He explains that the guard has been busy uncovering evidence of accounting fraud and testimony from a slave trader in Lilywald. He continues, revealing this evidence gave them the justification to bring their forces here without objection from the Hortony Empire. Her eyes widen as she begins to understand the full scope of his plan. He gently takes her hand, reassuring her that his men are already protecting her parents. Flinch. She pulls back slightly, surprised by his touch and the news. Elsewhere, her relieved mother and father are seen being guarded by several loyal knights. Choke! Overcome with relief, she is rendered speechless. Slump. Her body goes limp as the weight of her fears finally lifts. Wipe. He gently wipes the bloodstain from her cheek with his gloved hand. Tap. His hand rests on her leg as he softly asks if she's hurt. Overwhelmed, she throws her arms around him in a tight embrace, and he hugs her back. Tremble! As she holds him, she's surprised to feel him shaking. Squeeze. She grips his cape and asks if he was worried about her. She looks up, waiting for an answer he seems hesitant to give. She realizes the truth, thinking to herself that he wasn't just worried, he was bloodthirsty. He confesses he wanted to kill anyone who had hurt her, but decided it was too much of a hassle. Touched, she asks why he's so concerned for her when she's nobody special. MMPH. Instead of answering, he leans in and gently kisses her forehead. A small, knowing smile plays on her lips as she looks up at him. She tells him she's surprised to see him expressing himself so openly. Gently touching his cheek, she softly says she knows he isn't good at it, causing him to blush. She looks at him with a warm, understanding smile. His piercing blue eyes soften as he gazes back at her. Surrounded by flowers, she leans forward and gives him a tender kiss on the cheek. In a sun-drenched courtyard, she is finally reunited with her parents, watched over by their loyal knights. In a heartwarming embrace, the pink-haired woman and her mother cry with joy in her father's arms. Approaching the crown prince, the blue-haired Aldrich asks if the two of them have made up. The crown prince smirks, replying that if they hadn't, the entire country would be in flames right now. He lets out a hearty laugh while Aldrich laughs nervously beside him, shocked by the over-the-top joke. Still laughing, Aldrich asks with a hint of fear if he's actually joking. As Julius announces they should head back, the blue-haired knight asks in disbelief if he's joking. Then, Arya turns around with a curious look on her face. She rushes toward Julius, calling out to him. Beam. Grin! He turns to her with an overwhelmingly cheerful smile. Reach! He presents a simple, shining ring in his gloved palm. She firmly tells him to take it back, and the request sends a literal shockwave through a stunned Julius and his knights. Arya clarifies that she is no longer his fiancé or his knight, but makes another offer. Utterly bewildered by her words, Julius is lost in a sea of confusion. Reach! As she continues, her hand goes to the hilt of her sword. With a radiant smile, she presents her sword, offering her loyalty and skill. He looks back at her with a dazed, almost starstruck expression. Blaze! The blue-haired knight panics as Arya confronts Julius about his order to protect Lilywald from the crown prince. Julius simply lets out a quiet ha in amusement. Tremble! The other knights shake in fear, whispering Arya's name. Holding her sword, Arya turns with a bright smile, asking, yes? Julius confidently asks if she remembers what he said during their last match. He points a finger, emphasizing his point. In a flashback to the training grounds, his words echo, whoever drops their sword first loses, as his own sword rests on the rack. Whoosh! He excitedly points to the rack, reminding her of the rule he set. She questions his logic, pointing out that the rule was about dropping swords, and they were using wooden training swords, not his real one. Rip. Furious, Julius tears a document in half, declaring her win invalid. Arya stares back at him, utterly dumbfounded by his outburst. He grabs her arm with a joyful expression, announcing it's time to get married as his knights rush to stop him. Crab. She forcefully stops him, an angry scowl on her face. He looks down at her, momentarily confused by her resistance. Spin. With a powerful move, she flips him completely over her shoulder. Wham! He crashes hard onto the ground as she declares he's being ridiculous. Crack. Looking up from the ground, he tells her he's warned her about what she can and cannot joke about. Loom. A terrifying vision of her with bloodshot eyes looms over him, questioning if a life-altering choice is a joking matter. She calls him selfish as he begins to push himself up. She continues to scold him, asking why a grown man like him can't be considerate of others. Chastened, he looks down, unable to meet her gaze. Slump. Defeated, he kneels before her and quietly apologizes. Ugh. He grits his teeth, shutting his eyes in silent frustration. Sigh. Exhausted, Arya rubs her forehead and asks him what he truly wants from her. He looks up with a pained expression, asking her why she still doesn't understand. Turn. As she turns to face him, he looks up, confused by her question. He claims he's expressed his feelings in many ways, and even asks what episode they're on. She retorts that despite everything, he never once told her that he likes her. Scratch. Stunned into silence, he touches his cheek, realizing she's right. And he rises to his feet. Step. He approaches her and says her name, prompting her to ask what he wants. Wish. He waves his hand as she urges him to hurry so they can file their report. He covers his blushing face with his hand, asking her why she's making that face. She stands with her arms crossed, blushing and looking away. He grits his teeth, his own face flushed red with a mix of embarrassment and determination. Lean. He moves in close, looking down at her pouting expression. With a serious gaze, he confesses, "You're always there when I need you. I like you." What? Her eyes widen in complete shock at his sudden, direct confession. He continues, adding that he also likes how she always tries to walk beside him, not behind him. The white-haired crown prince tells the pink-haired woman that she's clumsy and always foolishly charges straight ahead. A smiling, light blue-haired man from her past says he likes her for that, while in the background a woman drags a man away as an orange-haired boy watches in shock. The crown prince continues, admitting that while he wishes she weren't a bad drunk, he still finds it cute, causing her to blush. He leans closer, his expression soft as he confesses that he likes her voice. His confession continues as he lifts her eyes, lips, and every single strand of her hair, deepening her blush. Overwhelmed by his words, she is left flustered and speechless. Cupping her face, he looks into her eyes and asks if she is satisfied now. His intense gaze holds hers as his gloved hand gently rests on her hair. Pull. She gently pushes his hand away from her face, too flustered to look at him directly. The crown prince looks down, his expression turning somber at her apparent rejection. Bend. In a sudden, grand gesture, he kneels down before her. Amidst a golden glow, he gently takes her hand in his armored one. Looking up at her with earnest eyes, he begins to ask her a life-altering question. Surrounded by a cascade of flowers, he formally asks if she will let him protect her for the rest of his life. Squeeze. Her hand tightens in his as she whispers his title, Your Highness. Blushing amidst a field of flowers, she gives him an astounding answer. No? Her rejection shatters the world around the crown prince. His mind goes blank as he feels himself plummeting through a cosmic void of pure shock. Gasp. Snapping back to reality, his face is a mask of utter disbelief. Still kneeling, he stammers, asking her to please repeat what she just said. She turns her head away slightly and reaffirms her decision with a firm number. In a moment of sheer panic, he shouts back that he doesn't want to either. Oops. He immediately realizes his mistake, frantically wondering if he should just knock her out and kidnap her. She turns back to him as he reluctantly admits that as a knight, she is his sovereign. As she listens intently, he confesses that he enjoys serving her. He insists he enjoys it as much as he hates to admit it, wondering if he has to repeat himself. She looks down, explaining that she can't imagine herself standing idly by while he protects her. A vision of her in a formal gown with her face obscured appears as she says that role just isn't her. A close-up on his brilliant blue eyes shows he is listening intently to her every word. With a determined expression, she continues to explain her reasoning. He listens as she gives another reason for her refusal. She's a low-ranking noble. Brush. She gently brushes his hand with hers in a gesture of quiet refusal. She looks at him with a soft but resolute expression on her face. Looking up at her, he asks if this means she would be fine with him marrying someone else. With determination in her eye, she agrees and tells him she will let him go. Her eyes suddenly fly open wide in shock, as if surprised by her own words. Turn! She spins in embarrassment and lets out a stifled laugh, completely flustered. She stands there with a deeply embarrassed and confused look on her face. Chuckle. The crown prince begins to laugh, his shoulders trembling, as she asks him why. He turns to her, smiling, and asks if she can say it again, but she hides her face and says this is why she said no. Bah-ha-ha! He can't contain his amusement any longer and bursts into joyous laughter. His expression turns serious again as he confronts her, asking why she alone gets to decide. He tells her that even if she were wearing the most beautiful dress imaginable, he could still picture her wielding a sword, envisioning her as a warrior princess. Tears well up in her eyes, deeply moved by his complete understanding of who she is. Standing at a distance, he gently beckons for her to come to him. Overwhelmed with emotion, tears stream down her face as she calls him arrogant. Whoosh! In a flash, he closes the distance between them. He pulls her into a powerful, loving embrace. Squeeze! He holds her tightly, tears of relief in his own eyes as he whispers that he's been waiting. Whoosh! As someone cries out for Your Highness, a young, white-haired boy sits peacefully under a tree, engrossed in a book. Rustle! A young girl's heeled shoes step through the grass, approaching the scene. The blonde-haired girl quietly stands behind the boy, who remains unaware as he continues to read. A flashback begins with a prophecy, signified by two hands clasped in prayer. The prophecy foretells a grim time, symbolized by a field of swords piercing a stone tablet. Following the prophecy, a hooded figure holds a newborn baby before a magical sigil, announcing the birth of the crown prince. The young prince stands before a stained glass window, adored by the people below for his intelligence and excellence. In a cavern, the young boy reaches for a massive sword embedded in an anvil. Grip! He takes a firm hold of the hilt, ready to prove his destiny. With a powerful pull, lines of golden energy erupt from the sword. Whoosh! The energy explodes into a blinding flash of light as the sword is freed. A bishop exclaims in shock while the king identifies the boy as Julius. The weapon is revealed to be the Holy Sword, and Julius is declared the chosen holy knight of the Rosenberg Empire. Whoosh! Now holding the enormous blade, young Julius is tasked with protecting the empire for generations. The king, with a solemn expression, orders the bells to be rung, announcing the birth of a new holy knight. Julius looks down at the legendary sword with a thoughtful, seemingly unimpressed. His introspective gaze is shown in a close-up. He internally questions the situation, wondering if it's truly that big of a deal. Carrying the massive sword on his back, the young prince walks away alone. Trudge! Julius walks through the dark as whispers praise him for drawing the sword at age 5, calling him the child of prophecy. He is burdened by the whispers of nobles who seek to use his status for their own gain. Trudge! An older Julius is shown walking as the narration indicates several years have passed. At the emperor's suggestion, a sword-fighting contest is held for the crown prince and other noble children. A father pressures his son to impress the crown prince, emphasizing the opportunity to guarantee his future. A man with long brown hair tied back is called out to as Luca. Luca and another man search for the crown prince, who seems to be missing from the event. Luca smirks, thinking to himself that this fawning spectacle is not what Julius needs. The scene returns to young Julius reading peacefully under the tree, away from the contest. A young girl in simple shoes approaches him through the grass. Whoosh! The wind blows through his hair as he remains lost in his book. Flutter! A young girl with blonde pigtails, Arya, now stands silently behind the reading prince. HMPH. Annoyed at being ignored, she puffs out her cheeks. Shout! She startles him by yelling, You're Prince Julius, right? Ring! Julius jumps, looking completely rattled by her sudden and loud appearance. With a mischievous little ha, she glances down at her own wooden sword. Whoosh! Surrounded by a field of flowers, she cheerfully points at his holy sword and demands, Give it to me. Julius stares back at her, utterly bewildered by her audacious request. Stomp! An angry Arya stomps her foot, introducing herself and complaining that she wanted to be the one to pull the holy sword. As she continues stomping toward him, he asks how she managed to get in. Hiya! She raises her wooden sword, declaring that strength equals justice. Squabble! The two children erupt into a comical, dusty brawl. Done, done! The fight ends with Julius standing over a defeated Arya who lies on the ground with an ugh. Slide. Looking concerned, Julius urges her to leave before they're discovered, stating he doesn't want any trouble. Tremble. Face down on the ground, a shaking Arya comes to a decision. Whoosh! She leaps to her feet and points an accusatory finger at him. Done. With a determined blush, she fiercely declares, "I accept you as my rival." Julius is stunned into silence, a single bead of sweat rolling down his face as he processes her words. Grr. Picking up his book, he reluctantly agrees, telling her she can be his rival if she can beat him. He dismissively tells her to go back to her mommy, which only infuriates her more. Grip! Refusing to be dismissed, she grabs his sword and shouts that she gets to decide. In a sepia-toned memory, a young blonde girl with pigtails punches a boy's back, vowing to beat him and become the Holy Knight. The young blonde-haired boy looks down with a solemn expression. Dash! A brown-haired man runs towards the two children, demanding to know who the boy is, while a young blonde girl greets him as Your Highness. The young blonde boy looks down at the girl and asks what she will do once she becomes the Holy Knight. Clench. As someone tells her to stop struggling, the girl defiantly declares that she will protect her sovereign, for that is the duty of a knight. The young blonde boy looks down, contemplating her passionate words. Lift! A man in a dark coat effortlessly hoists a large vase above his head while the young boy watches. Stride! The young blonde girl cries out as she's dragged away by a woman in a dark dress. Turning back, she shouts that she's going to beat him next time. He watches her go with a faint smile, listening as she tells him to just wait. He holds out his hand, making a silent, pinky promise. Surrounded by a burst of golden flowers, the young blonde girl winks and points, sealing her promise with a bright smile. A close-up shows her determined, sparkling golden eye. A smiling, dark-haired man carrying a strange device approaches the young blonde boy, asking about the commotion. Flop! The boy suddenly drops to his knees, a book falling to the ground beside him. The dark-haired man calls out in alarm to Julius, asking what's wrong. A single tear falls from Julius's brilliant blue eye as he struggles to speak. Kneeling on the ground in tears, Julius clutches his chest in anguish as two magical tear-like jewels float before him. Whoosh! In a field of vibrant flowers, the dark-haired man stands over the kneeling, now white-haired Julius, as a pink-haired girl rushes into view. Overcome with sorrow, the white-haired Julius weeps in the sun-drenched field of flowers.